Chapter 12:13. Song Qing-shu was depressed. He suddenly thought of how great it would be if all the women listened to him. However, he quickly dispelled this ridiculous thought. All the women had their own characteristics and charm because of their different personalities. If they all listened to him, how would they be different from the silicone dolls in his previous life? While he was lost in thought, Xia Qingqing ran over and carefully bandaged his wound. She cried as she did so. "Brother Song, I'm sorry. I didn't expect to hurt you. It's a heavenly novel." Song Qing-shu quickly comforted her. At the same time, he was distressed. He could use his authority as a man to suppress the grudge between the two women, but it was better to let it go. If he did not get rid of the hidden danger, he could not guarantee that something irreversible would happen in the future. "You really didn't want to hurt him?" Dongfang Muxue suddenly asked. Song Qing-shu's scalp went numb. Were they going to start again? Of course. Xia Qingqing glared at him. "I'd rather die than let Brother Song get hurt. Don't say such inauspicious things." Song Qing-shu quickly interrupted her. He was touched. It seemed that all the effort he had put in for Xia Qingqing all these years had not been in vain. She was a person who dared to love and hate, and was not a scheming person. Since she said that, it must be what she was thinking in her heart. It was definitely not just some pretty words. "Then may I ask, does a broken heart count as an injury?" Dongfang Muxue pressed. Xia Qingqing bit her lower lip. She could vaguely guess what the other party was going to say. However, she did not want to lie. "Yes." Dongfang Muxue smiled. "Then there are only two outcomes for you to take revenge. If you succeed, I die. If you fail, you die. But no matter which one of us dies, Song Qing-shu will be heartbroken. He will never be able to face the person who survived. Is that what you want?" Xia Qingqing fell silent. She had just found out about Dongfang Muxue's identity. Now that she had calmed down, she realized that it did not matter even if she had a grudge. Would she still be able to be with Song Qing-shu? "But you killed Brother Yuan. It's only right and proper for you to take revenge for your husband." Xia Qingqing's tone was not as firm as before. It was obvious that she was having an intense struggle in her heart. "That's right and proper," Dongfang Muxue sneered. "Then I saved your life on the battlefield. How are you going to repay me for that?" Xia Qingqing was suddenly at a loss for words. Her heart was in a fierce struggle. Looking at the current situation, it was obvious that she could not take revenge. It was not that there was no chance for her to play some tricks, but how could she face Big Brother Song after that? Moreover, Dongfang Muxue was right. She had saved my life. How can I repay her kindness with enmity? But if he didn't take revenge, how could Big Brother Yuan be at peace in the afterlife? I have already let down Big Brother Yuan by being together with Big Brother Song. If I still get along with my enemy as sisters, wouldn't I be an extremely shameless woman? Many thoughts surged into her mind, and Xia Qingqing's expression changed drastically. She seemed to have fallen into a trance. After a long time, she suddenly sighed. "Forget it." After saying that, she swiped the sword across her neck. She couldn't take revenge, but she also could not take revenge. After thinking about it, only death could give her peace of mind. "What are you doing?" Fortunately, the two men beside her were top martial artists. One of them knocked her golden snake sword out of her hand, and the other held her in his arms. "Big Brother Song, just let me die. I really can't live anymore." Xia Qingqing buried her head in Song Qing-shu's chest and began to sob. Song Qing-shu was silent. He did not understand why Xiao Feng chose to commit suicide in demigods and semi-devils. Now that he saw Xia Qingqing, he understood. Right now, Xia Qingqing could neither advance nor retreat. Although he could force her to live, every day she lived was one more day of torment for her. Only death could release her from this. Just as Song Qing-shu was feeling helpless, Dongfang Muxue suddenly said, "Xia Qingqing, have you ever thought of another possibility? What if Yuan Chengji didn't die?" "What?" These words were like a bolt from the blue, and even Song Qing-shu looked at her in shock. Although the other party's tone was filled with uncertainty, with Dongfang Muxue's personality, she would never say something like this without any basis. "Brother Yuan is not dead?" Xia Qingqing was pleasantly surprised at first, but she quickly calmed down and murmured, That's impossible. I was the one who buried him. Big Brother Yuan's head was fatally injured. Unless an immortal descended, how could he be saved? Dongfang Mushiwa chuckled. I naturally have my reasons for saying that. Yuan Qingji might still be alive in this world. Tell me, what happened? Xia Qingqing's face was filled with excitement. Who knew that Dongfang Mushiwa would look at her injuries? How are your injuries? Dongfang Mushiwa asked. No. With Song Qingshu's current strength, he would be fine after a little adjustment. Just as he was about to answer honestly, he noticed Dongfang Mushiwa secretly winking at him. Although he was a little confused, he instinctively followed her meaning and said, The sword wound on my hand is nothing, but that palm of yours almost killed me. I'm afraid I won't be able to fight with others without a few months of rest. Xia Qingqing wanted to know about Yuan Qingji, but she glared at Dongfang Mushiwa when she heard that he was injured so badly. How could you be so vicious? How could you hurt Brother Song so badly? She did not think that there was anything wrong. Although Song Qingshu's martial arts were powerful, Dongfang Bubi had left a huge shadow in her heart. In her heart, Dongfang Bubi was not much different from the demon god. Song Qingshu was only seriously injured after receiving Dongfang Bubi's attack. It was all thanks to his strong cultivation that he could withstand it. Dongfang Mushiwa sneered. What do you mean I hurt him badly? That palm attack was clearly used to deal with you. You wanted to kill me, but you still want me to show mercy? You're the real culprit. You. Xia Qingqing was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Unfortunately, she knew that she could not beat her in a fight, nor could she win against her in a scolding. She could only endure it and turn to Song Qingshu. Who's Big Brother Song? If we find a few experts to help you heal, will it help you recover faster? Just as Song Qingshu was about to reply, Dongfang Mushiwa spoke first. How could he be healed so easily with the help of a few experts after receiving my full blow? However, but what? Xia Qingqing hurriedly asked, seeing that the situation had taken a turn for the better. The corners of Dongfang Mushiwa's lips curled up slightly as she pointed at Song Qingshu. However, this fellow's Joy Diana is the best medicine for internal injuries. As long as a woman is willing to sacrifice all her energy to help him heal, he should be able to recover very quickly. Xia Qingqing frowned and asked suspiciously, I've been with him for so long. Why didn't I know that he could treat injuries like this? She naturally knew about the healing effects of the Joy Zen, but she had never heard of this method. Dongfang Mushiwa said without changing her expression, Who asked your brother Song to be a man who has tender and protective feelings for women? This method is extremely harmful to a woman's body. He is not willing to use it on you, so of course you don't know about it. Then how did you know? Xia Qingqing was also a smart woman and was not so easily fooled. Have you forgotten who I am? As the leader of the Devil sect, I am naturally knowledgeable. Back then, I was the one who guided Song Qingshu to learn the Joy Zen in Tubo. Dongfang Mushiwa replied instantly. Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. This Dongfang Mushiwa was indeed an amazing person who ruled over 100,000 people. She really came up with one lie after another. Dongfang Mushiwa continued, Xia Qingqing, it's time to prove that you love him. Help him treat his injuries. Xia Qingqing blushed. She naturally knew what the Joy Zen meant. You are the one who hurt Brother Song. Why don't you go? Firstly, my cultivation base is much higher than yours. If I go, it would be a waste of my extraordinary abilities. Dongfang Mushiwa replied with conviction. Secondly, it's obvious that you want to kill me for revenge. If I don't have my inner force now, won't I be at your mercy? I'm not that stupid. Xia Qingqing knew that if she promised not to seek revenge in the future, she would be able to turn the tables on her. However, she could not bring herself to say it. She could only snort and say, If I lose my inner energy, won't I never be able to seek revenge? Dongfang Mushiwa sneered. With your cultivation, you won't be able to seek revenge even if you don't have it. Xia Qingqing's expression turned ugly. Although her words were harsh, she knew that they were the truth. Biting her lip, Xia Qingqing exhaled. All right, I will treat Brother Song. You guys can leave first. Dongfang Mushiwa waved at Indigo Phoenix. Although Indigo Phoenix was a little reluctant, she still nodded and left. Why aren't you leaving? Xia Qingqing said angrily. After all, she still had the identity of Madame Yuan. When she was intimate with Song Qingshu, she would subconsciously avoid everyone else. The only exception was Ajio. After going through so many things, the two of them were already like sisters. Did I say I wanted to leave? Dongfang Muxue chuckled. If you don't leave, how am I going to treat Brother Song? If not for the fact that she knew that she was no match for Dongfang Muxue, the embarrassed and angry Xia Qingqing would have pounced on her and fought with her. Do as you please. I won't disturb you. Dongfang Muxue waved her hand and made a gesture of invitation. At the side, Song Qingshu was at a loss. He did not know what Dongfang Muxue was up to. He could only continue to wait for the situation to develop. Seeing that Xia Qingqing was looking at her silently, Dongfang Muxue finally used her trump card. If you don't want to know Yuan Qingji's whereabouts, then just wait. Xia Qingqing's eyelashes fluttered. She was clearly affected by Dongfang Muxue's words. How do I know that you're not lying to me? Looks like you won't be satisfied if I don't reveal something to you. Dongfang Muxue stood with her hands behind her back. She seemed to be reminiscing. Just like the 9 swords beyond the swords, the mixed elements technique is not a technique of Mount Hua. Its full name is actually the 9 transformations mixed elements technique. It is a mystical technique passed down from ancient times. It is said that after mastering it, one will be impervious to fire and water and invulnerable to weapons and stones. However, the people of the Mount Hua sect are short-sighted and have always been led astray. They are unable to unleash the true power of this mystical technique. Seeing that she had suddenly shut up, Xia Qingqing asked, and then? Dongfang Muxue pointed at Song Qingshu with a faint smile. Let's treat your man first. First, I would like to thank all the readers for their monthly votes and donations on the official account. Then, by the way, previously a reader kept urging me to resurrect Yuan Qingji. That way, it will be more exciting to be with Xia Qingqing. Let us first despise this gentleman, Oxiando. In the past, I have always rejected him, although I have to admit that this is a little more. Chapter 12:14. You, Xia Qingqing glared at her angrily. However, Dongfang Muxue remained calm and did not want to say anything else. Heavenly Novel 2-inch, if you lie to me. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Xia Qingqing had no choice but to compromise. However, it did not matter much since she was saving Song Qingshu. Seeing Xia Qingqing taking off her clothes in front of Dongfang Muxue, Song Qingshu's eyes widened. He quickly sent a telepathic message to her. You can do that? Dongfang Muxue also replied telepathically. I have racked my brains for the sake of harmony in your harem. Don't tell me you can't afford it anymore at this point. She could not help but worry. After all, Song Qingshu had already fought 2 battles. The Indigo Phoenix was even more alluring. It would be a miracle if a normal man's legs were not jelly, let alone recovering. Are you kidding me? Song Qingshu glared at her as if he was greatly insulted. You were invincible back then. Your man is invincible in the bridal chamber. Find a time next time and don't ask the Indigo Phoenix for help. Let's see if you won't beg for mercy. Dongfang Muxue's heart skipped a beat. She could not help but spit. Xia Qingqing had already curled up in his arms. She pressed her face against his chest and asked shyly, Brother Song, how can I help you? Song Qingshu was not a stubborn old scholar. He flipped over and pressed her down. You can help me like this. You have the scent of another woman on you. Xia Qingqing frowned. Song Qingshu was a little embarrassed. Should I go and freshen up? Forget it. Xia Qingqing sighed. She hooked her arms around his neck and pressed him down again. Dongfang Muxue's lips curled up as she looked at the red waves in front of her. She walked over quietly. Xia Qingqing was in a daze. Suddenly, she felt an unusually smooth body pressing against her back. She could not help but shiver. What do you want? I'm here to help you. Dongfang Muxue gently bit her earlobe as her voice was filled with temptation. Go away. I don't need your help. At this moment, Xia Qingqing was extremely embarrassed. She reached out to push her away, but the door was wide open and she was attacked by the other party. Don't touch there. With great difficulty, he finally managed to push her away. Xia Qingqing's face and ears were red as she began to put on her clothes. As she did so, she gritted her teeth and said angrily, "If you want to have fun, do it yourself. Don't drag me into this." Dongfang Muxue, however, lay on the bed confidently and looked at her with a smile. "If you don't come, you'll never know Yuan Qingji's whereabouts in this lifetime." You. Xia Qingqing was angry and anxious. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? She wanted nothing more than to pounce on her and bite her. Unfortunately, she knew that with the martial arts of the two of them, she would only be sending herself into the tiger's den. While she was still in a daze, Dongfang Muxue pulled her back. "Come here." Xia Qingqing could not resist her strength and fell over. Song Qingshu hurriedly caught her to prevent her from getting hurt. At the same time, he frowned at Dongfang Muxue. "Don't go too far. Your heart aches?" Dongfang Muxue moved closer to her ear and said in an extremely seductive voice, "Haven't you always been curious about how I with women? Today, I can let you have it easy. Let's find Indigo Phoenix next time." Song Qingshu was worried that Xia Qingqing would be embarrassed and said hesitantly, "Idiot, do you think I want to be intimate with her? Isn't it to resolve the hatred between us?" Dongfang Muxue said impatiently, "I see." While Song Qingshu was still in a daze, Dongfang Muxue had already hugged Xia Qingqing from behind. Looking at the two beauties entangled in the blanket like two beautiful snakes, Song Qingshu could only feel his heart pounding and the blood in his body boiling. How could he care so much anymore? He hugged Xia Qingqing from the front and kissed her deeply. Xia Qingqing had never experienced such a situation before. One was gentle and delicate while the other was masculine and tough. Not long after, they were completely defeated and could only cry and complain. After an unknown amount of time, Xia Qingqing finally straightened her body with great difficulty. Her face was intoxicatingly flushed, and her long messy hair was scattered in front of her chest, covering her beautiful and alluring figure. Now you can tell me, right? At this moment, Dongfang Muxue was lying lazily in Song Qingshu's arms. She leaned close to his ear and grumbled, "Fei Yin was right. You're a beast. Just now, you almost broke my waist. Why didn't you think about my injuries? Who told you to bully Qing Qing? I'm going to get justice for her." Song Qingshu's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "When I can beat you, I will be the one on top," Dongfang Muxue said angrily. "I'm afraid you won't have the chance in this lifetime." Song Qingshu looked at her with a smile. Dongfang Muxue rarely did not refute. Just when she was sulking, she heard what Xia Qingqing said and replied angrily, "Say what? Why are you so untrustworthy?" I. Xia Qingqing was so emotional that she almost cried. Song Qingshu quickly got up to comfort her and said to Dongfang Muxue at the same time, "All right, stop keeping me in suspense. I want to know too. Why did you help her and not me?" Dongfang Muxue said unhappily, "Who told you to be so skilled? If I help you, Qingqing will be bullied to death by you." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. Dongfang Muxue, but in the end, Dongfang Muxue still told him the whole story. It turned out that she had long realized that she could not lie to Xia Qingqing about her identity as Dongfang Bubi for the rest of her life. As the saying goes, prepare for a rainy day. She had been thinking about how to deal with this matter for a long time. One day, she received information from her subordinates that there was a man in the Liao kingdom who looked and was very similar to Yuan Qingji in both appearance and martial arts. At first, she did not take it seriously. After all, she was confident in her skills and believed that no one could survive a fatal blow to the head. However, on her way to the south and passing by the Golden Snake Camp, she took a look at Yuan Qingji's tomb on a whim and found that it was empty. "That's impossible. I buried Big Brother Yuan with my own hands," Xia Qingqing exclaimed. Dongfang Muxue rolled her eyes at her. "Why would I lie to you about something that can be easily verified? Why don't you go back and check it out yourself? Could it be that his enemies stole his body?" Song Qingshu frowned. From his point of view, Yuan Qingji's resurrection would not benefit him at all. After all, He had inherited his name, territory, and even his wife. Of course, Song Qingshu's heart was not that dark. If Yuan Qingji was really alive, he would not be afraid of the competition. In a sense, the two of them were no longer on the same level. That's what I thought before. After all, resurrection was too common sense. Dongfang Muxue did not think in that direction. So, until the battle just now, she still had the idea of killing Xia Qingqing with a borrowed knife. But when Xia Qingqing was fighting with her, and Song Qingshu was in a dilemma, a thought suddenly popped up in her mind. If only Yuan Qingji was still alive. As soon as this thought popped up, it got out of hand. Many details that she did not care about before started to connect. Many things in the world were like this. If there was an impossibility in the heart, there would be countless reasons to deny it. But once the heart believed that it was possible, no matter how difficult it was, it would be overcome to achieve it. Dongfang Muxue was like this. Once the premise was that Yuan Qingji was still alive, she found that many things could be explained. After half a day, this is just your guess? Xia Qingqing finally could not stand it anymore. She was led by the nose by Dongfang Muxue just to find out Yuan Qingji's whereabouts. This answer clearly did not satisfy her. Of course, it's not just that. Dongfang Muxue explained unhurriedly. One of the main reasons why she asked Xia Qingqing to do this, and that was because she needed time to sort out her thoughts. Now that she had more or less deduced the whole thing, she said, actually, the reason why people don't believe that Yuan Qingji is still alive is because they believe that with my power, no one can survive if I hit the acupoint on the top of the head with all my strength. Song Qingshu nodded. Not to mention Yuan Qingji, even with my current power, if I don't circulate my inner force to protect my body, I'm afraid I'll be dead if you hit that spot. That's right, I thought so too at first. Dongfang Muxue continued, but on second thought, if Yuan Qingji was still alive, he must have had something that helped him escape. He was hit on the forehead, so naturally, he couldn't have armor or anything like that. No matter how I thought about it, it could only be because of the inner force he cultivated. How is the mixed Yuan technique so magical? As Yuan Qingji's wife, Xia Qingqing naturally knew a lot about this inner force. At this moment, she was extremely conflicted. On one hand, she hoped that Yuan Qingji was still alive, but on the other hand, common sense denied this possibility. Of course, the mixed Yuan technique isn't that magical. What about the 9 transformation mixed Yuan technique? Dongfang Muxue smiled. The 9 transformation mixed Yuan technique? Song Qingshu frowned. Even he had never heard of this technique, let alone Xia Qingqing. Dongfang Muxue was not in a hurry to explain this technique. Instead, she said, the Mount Hua sect is a very magical sect. Although the current generation is a little weak, it has always produced many masters. The main reason is that the Mount Hua sect has a very rich collection of martial arts manuals. Other than the 9 techniques of Mount Hua that everyone knows, the Mount Hua sect actually has many other hidden divine techniques. For example, Feng Qingyang's 9 swords beyond the swords and our Sunflower Treasure Book of Sunflower were both stolen from the Mount Hua sect. The Sunflower Treasure Book was taken from the Mount Hua sect? Xia Qingqing exclaimed. After all, the Sunflower Treasure Book was famous in the Jianghu. She never expected it to have such a connection. That's right. Song Qingshu nodded. He had read The Smiling, Proud Wanderer, so he naturally knew this secret of the Jianghu. Chapter 12:15. Hearing Dongfang Muxue's explanation, it was not impossible that Yuan Qingji was still alive. Xia Qingqing was pleasantly surprised and asked, what is the 9 revolutions mixed energy skill? Even Song Qingshu pricked up his ears. Although he was known as the Jianghu know-it-all, that was mainly because he had read the original work. In terms of understanding the secrets of the Jianghu, he was definitely not as knowledgeable as Dongfang Muxue. Dongfang Muxue explained, the 9 revolutions mixed energy skill was written by Chun Tuan, an Earth immortal. It's called the 9 revolutions because one has to go through 9 life and death cycles. After 9 rebirths, one can ascend and become an immortal. Really? Song Qingshu frowned. With his current cultivation, he could be said to be standing at the top of the Jianghu, but he still could not touch the threshold of the heavenly Tao. He really did not believe that immortals really existed in the world. The idea of becoming an immortal is indeed too vague. It's most likely just a rumor. Dongfang Muxue answered, but according to the records of the seniors of the Sun Moon sect, every time the 9 revolutions mixed energy skill is completed, one's power will multiply. This is true. What exactly does it take to complete the first transition? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be puzzled as he listened to her explanation. It said that the practitioner needs to go through life and death, and then come back from the dead to complete the first revolution. As for how to come back from the dead, there are many different opinions. Many of the seniors' notes have speculated about this. The most likely scenario is that the practitioner is not really dead, but in a feigned state of fetal breathing. That's why the 9 revolutions mixed energy skill is also known as the embryonic breathing technique. Dongfang Mushue's explanation impressed Song Qing-shu. She was indeed the former leader of the Devil sect. She was really knowledgeable. Embryonic breathing is a Taoist concept. Legend has it that when a top Khanate master is seriously injured, he will enter the embryonic breathing state to heal himself. During this period, his body will be impervious to fire and water. If Yuan Qingji really practiced the 9 revolutions mixed energy skill, it is indeed possible that he could enter the embryonic breathing state by chance. If that's the case, being buried in the ground will actually speed up the recovery, Song Qing-shu said as he pondered. If it was any other part of his body that was injured, then it might really be as you guys guessed. But Big Brother Yuan was injured in his head. How could he recover from such an injury? Even though Xia Qingqing wanted to believe it, everything was beyond her understanding. Dongfang Muxue furrowed her brows. Clearly, she was also uncertain about this matter. The human brain is very mysterious. It is made up of many parts, and each part has its own function. Some control movements, some control speech, some control nerves. Some parts are very mysterious, and so far, I don't know what they do. Even if they are removed, it doesn't seem to affect a person's safety. Song Qing-shu spoke frankly with assurance. In his previous life, he had a friend who was seriously injured in a car accident. During the surgery, about a spoonful of his brain was dug out from the back of his forehead. After he recovered, he was still alive and kicking. At least before Song Qing-shu traveled to this world, his friend didn't show any side effects. Coincidentally, Yuan Qingji's forehead was also injured by Dongfang Mushue's embroidery needle. With the protection of the 9 revolutions immemorial technique, he might really be able to achieve nirvana rebirth. After he finished speaking, he found that the 2 women were staring at him with their mouths agape. I didn't expect you to know medicine as well. Where did you learn those nerves from? Dongfang Muxue exclaimed. Song Qing-shu smiled awkwardly. I used to hang out with the poison hand king of medicine for a while. It was not good to talk about his hometown anymore. After all, Song Qing-shu's hometown was at the foot of Mount Wudong. Dongfang Muxue was very knowledgeable and naturally could not deceive him. The poison hand king of medicine. Dongfang Muxue was immersed in her memories. I invited him several times back then, but he refused to join the Sun Moon sect. Now it seems that it was indeed a great pity. He joined the Sun Moon sect, so you won't see me alive now. Song Qing-shu snorted, and, at the same time, he had a strange expression on his face. Given your personality back then, it's really surprising that he could still live after rejecting you. Don't think of me as the kind of devil who kills without blinking an eye, all right? Dongfang Muxue was also very depressed when she saw Song Qing-shu and Xia Qingqing's expressions. The poison hand king of medicine has always been secretive, and he's the best in poison in the world. There's no need for me to provoke such an enemy. Xia Qingqing suddenly said, Big Brother Song, I want to go to Liao. Song Qing-shu hesitated for a moment, but finally smiled and said, All right. Dongfang Muxue sneered. Xia Qingqing, do you want Yuan Qingji to be alive or dead? Of course he's alive. Xia Qingqing answered without hesitation. But have you ever thought that if Yuan Qingji really is alive, Will you return to his embrace, or be with little Song? Dongfang Mushua looked at her quietly. Song Qingshu said gloomily, "Can you not call me little? Which part of my body is small?" Although he said that, he was still paying attention to Xia Qingqing's reaction. Dongfang Mushua's gaze fell on a certain part of him, and her face blushed for the first time. She snorted. "Your body is not small, but you're still young." "How old are you exactly?" This was a question that Song Qingshu had always been curious about. He knew that Dongfang Mushua was definitely older than him, but he had no idea how much older. "What? Are you afraid that I'm an old woman who wants to eat young grass?" Dongfang Mushua's lips curled up slightly as she asked with a teasing expression. Song Qingshu said with an exaggerated expression, "If all the old women in the world were as good-looking as you, then wouldn't all the old men in the world be overjoyed?" Dongfang Mushua spat, Tui, glib tongue. Xia Qingqing turned a deaf ear to their banter, and all she could think about was Dongfang Mushua's words. "That's right, if Big Brother Yuan is still alive, how am I going to live in the future?" She had always prided herself on being loyal to love, and in the end, she only agreed to be with Song Qingshu under the premise that Yuan Chengji was dead. But now that Yuan Chengji had been resurrected, she had become the kind of heartless and lowly person that she hated the most. Seeing her expression change, Song Qingshu was worried that there would be repercussions from her great joy and sorrow. He hurriedly patted her shoulder and comforted her. "Qingqing, I'll support you no matter what decision you make. Don't have any psychological burden." Xia Qingqing took a deep breath, and as if she had made a final decision, she opened her eyes. "I've decided to make a trip to Liao." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything else in the end. He smiled bitterly. "All right, I'll get someone to send you there." Xia Qingqing glanced at his reaction and couldn't help but snort. "You're not even going to ask me to stay?" Song Qingshu's eyes lit up, and he instantly realized that there was a turning point in the situation. A smile gradually appeared on his face. "Then you wanted to ask you to stay?" Chapter 12:16. "But Yuan is your husband." Song Qingshu complained in his mind, but he said, "Then why do you still want to go to Liao? After all, we used to be husband and wife. We have to put an end to it." Xia Qingqing sighed. Song Qingshu nodded. "Okay, I'll go with you." Xia Qingqing shook her head. "There's so many things to do here. How can you leave?" "Don't worry, I won't rekindle my relationship with Brother Yuan." Song Qingshu hugged her. "But I'm worried about Yuan. What if he uses force on you? You can't beat him." Xia Qingqing spat. "Puffed. Brother Yuan is a gentleman. Do you think he's like you?" Song Qingshu buried his head in her arms. "I don't care. I won't allow you to find him alone." Xia Qingqing blushed and pushed him away. "Then who was the one who agreed to let me go?" "I was just saying, if you really leave me, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you by my side," Song Qingshu said confidently with a shameless attitude. "What a scoundrel," Xia Qingqing said, but she was not really angry. Instead, she felt a little happy. Although Liao is not as vast as it used to be, its territory is still not small. "Where are you going to find him?" Dongfang Mushua suddenly said. Xia Qingqing was stunned. She knew that Xia Qingqing was telling the truth. The kingdom of Liao controlled almost 1,000 miles of territory. Even if Yuan Qingji was really in the kingdom of Liao, finding him would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. How about this? Now that the 3 border defenses are in full swing, the imperial court is short of manpower. Why don't Qingqing go back to the capital with me? Besides helping with government affairs, we can also use the imperial court's intelligence system to investigate Yuan Chengji's whereabouts, Dongfang Mushua said. Song Qingshu heard that she wanted to take the opportunity to ease the relationship between him and Xia Qingqing, so he naturally agreed. Okay. Xia Qingqing pondered for a while and knew that this was the best way. But I have to go back to the Golden Snake Camp first and check whether Brother Yuan's tomb is really empty. No problem. It's on the way back anyway. I'll accompany you. Dongfang Mushua agreed immediately. Song Qingshu pulled her aside with a strange expression. Is Yuan Qingji's tomb really empty? Dongfang Mushua rolled her eyes in annoyance. So I've wasted my time talking? Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly and said, I'm worried that you're deliberately fooling Qingqing in order to calm her down. Xia Qingqing coughed. It's almost daybreak. I'll head back first. Song Qingshu asked curiously. Just sleep here. What's the problem? Seeing his blank face, as if he really didn't know, Xia Qingqing stomped her feet angrily. After all, I'm now Mrs. Yuan in name. If I'm seen going out your tent tomorrow morning, then tens of thousands of soldiers will know very quickly. Song Qingshu immediately smiled, and here I was wondering what it was. If it was in the past, I wouldn't have forced you. But now that I know Yuan Qingji might still be alive, I really can't let you go. Why? Xia Qingqing was stunned. Dongfang Muxue smiled and said, Isn't it because of the man's possessiveness? He just wants to declare your sovereignty to everyone. Now that his prestige is unprecedentedly high, and the old people of the Golden Snake Camp all think that Yuan Qingji is dead, they won't oppose your relationship. When everyone in the Golden Snake Camp gets used to your relationship, even if Yuan Qingji comes back, it won't be of any help. But this, Xia Qingqing blushed. This is so embarrassing for me. She had always prided herself on being loyal to love. When she thought of the strange looks others would give her after daybreak, she felt embarrassed and embarrassed. Song Qingshu is sometimes too soft and unwilling to be the bad guy. Since that's the case, let me say it. Dongfang Mushue's expression turned serious. If you don't settle your relationship as soon as possible, when the rest of the Golden Snake Camp knows that Yuan Qingji is still alive, what will you two do? At that time, in everyone's eyes, you're Mrs. Yuan. Once your relationship is exposed, you'll definitely be despised by the world. If you don't embarrass yourself now, you'll both regret it when your reputation is ruined. These words caused Xia Qingqing's expression to change several times. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. Although I vaguely sensed some danger, I didn't see it as clearly as you did. You're indeed someone who used to be a leader. Dongfang Muxue snorted softly, but her brows were full of pride. At the same time, she gave Xia Qingqing a look. Song Qingshu was not stupid. He immediately grabbed Xia Qingqing's hand and said, Qingqing, stay with me, okay? Xia Qingqing lowered her head. After a long time, she let out a soft hum. Okay. Song Qingshu was overjoyed. He grabbed Dongfang Muxue with one hand and Xia Qingqing with the other and crawled back into bed. There were too many things happening that night. Soon, the three of them fell asleep. When the morning sun shone into the tent, the three of them were still sleeping soundly. After some time, a soldier's voice suddenly came from outside the tent, reporting to the Golden Snake King. All the generals are waiting outside the tent. Ah! Xia Qingqing exclaimed and immediately sat up straight. She felt something strange in front of her chest. She looked down and couldn't help but get angry. Take your hands off me. Dongfang Muxue didn't even open her eyes. She just pinched her fingers and a satisfied smile appeared on her lips. It feels good. TSK, killing your husband and taking your wife. This feeling is really good. Xia Qingqing almost fainted from anger. She lifted the blanket and was about to fight with her. Song Qingshu hurriedly stopped the two girls. Everyone is outside. Stop it. Dongfang Muxue was beaming with joy. She obviously didn't care about the situation at all. Xia Qingqing, on the other hand, blushed and hurriedly put on her clothes. After a long time, the three of them finally walked out of the tent. When the people waiting outside saw Xia Qingqing following behind Song Qingshu with her head down and a red face, they were all stunned. However, they quickly revealed understanding smiles. After all, a beauty and a hero was a scene that everyone loved to see. Moreover, Song Qingshu had just made a godlike performance yesterday. His reputation was at its peak, so no one would object. As for the elders of the Golden Snake Camp, they felt more complicated. On one hand, they thought of Yuan Qingji and sighed in their hearts. On the other hand, Xia Qingqing represented the interests of the elders. The closer she was to Song Qingshu, the higher the status of the elders would rise. Zhao Min, who was in the crowd, poked Zhou Zhuo secretly and said with a fake smile, Weren't you treating that Miss Shui yesterday? Why is there another woman? Zhou Zhuo, your man is surrounded by so many vixens. What will you do in the future? Zhou Zhuo was smart and naturally knew that the other party wanted to use her as a tool. She replied indifferently, "As long as the vixen Miss Zhao isn't around, I can handle the others." Zhao Min was almost choked by her words. She had no choice but to humph guiltily. "Bah, that stinky man. Only you guys would fight over him like he's a treasure. This Junju doesn't care." Zhou Zhuo smiled faintly. That better be the case. Among this group of women, Ajio was probably the only one who sincerely wished Xia Qingqing well. Previously, she had always felt that she had been wronged for following Song Qingshu without an official title, but she knew Xia Qingqing's previous concerns. She didn't know why she had thought it through overnight. Following that, the higher-ups of the Golden Snake Camp held an emergency meeting. They had defeated the main force of the Green Camp yesterday and obtained a large amount of resources and manpower. This time, Li Kuxiu had come out in full force. The Jianghuai area at the rear was extremely empty. It was the best time to take advantage of the victory and pursue the enemy. Song Qingshu assigned different tasks to each of the generals. He had them lead the army to attack various states and counties while he was responsible for attacking Yangzhou. After the meeting, the generals left to prepare, leaving only Song Qingshu and the women in the tent. Dongfang Muxue did not dare to go out for too long because the Qing court was in a tight situation. It was inconvenient for her to accompany Song Qingshu to the south. She set off to the north on the same day. Xia Qingqing was worried about Yuan Chengji's whereabouts, so she went north with her. Naturally, Indigo Phoenix was no exception. Hearing that Xia Qingqing was going with Dongfang Muxue, Ajio was the most surprised. "Qingqing, why are you going north?" Song Qingshu explained on her behalf. "Ajio, I will tell you privately later." Ajio nodded understandingly and did not continue to ask. Before Dongfang Muxue left, she came to Zhao Min and handed her a light brown pill. She said softly, "I don't know the formula for the 3 corpses brain pill in your body, so naturally I can't cure it. However, if you haven't found the antidote before Duanyang, take this pill. It could delay the time for half a year. If you still can't find the antidote after half a year, then even the gods can't save you." She then left with Xia Qingqing and Indigo Phoenix. Zhao Min was stunned. She had never met her before, so how could she? Suddenly, Zhao Min lifted her head to look at Song Qingshu. Seeing that he was looking at her, she could not help but feel a surge of warmth in her heart. For the past few months, she had been smiling like a flower and did not look any different from before. However, only she knew how terrified she was in her heart. No matter how smart she was and how many masters she had under her command, she was still a girl after all. She shuddered at the thought of such a vicious worm hiding in her body. For the past few months, she had used almost all the strength she could muster. Time and time again, she thought that she could find the antidote. However, she was disappointed again and again. Gradually, she began to doubt whether she could find the antidote. Occasionally, in the dead of the night, she would think of Song Qingshu, that heartless man who had been busy with his own affairs and did not come to help her. It was inevitable that she would feel resentful, but all of this would disappear at this time. So, he still remembered the poison in my body. Chapter 12:17. Leading 100,000 cavalrymen and bringing beauties to Yangzhou. Song Qingshu beamed with joy. Good poem, good poem. Seeing his complacent expression, the women in the room all had strange expressions. Ajio finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Song Qingshu's face was a bit embarrassed. "Is there a problem?" Ajio pursed her lips and laughed. Although Song Qingshu is a genius, this poem is a bit ordinary. She was born in the royal family and was taught by the most knowledgeable Confucian and Hanlin since childhood. Naturally, she could distinguish between good and bad. Zhao Min also added with a smile, "It's not just ordinary, it's also suspected of being boastful." Song Qingshu was angry. "How am I boasting?" At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Those transmigrators all relied on Tang and song poems to show off, but he was the only one who was so sullen. Who asked the dynasty he transmigrated to have a problem? Those famous poems in history had long been published. and the most famous poet of the Qing dynasty, Nailan Xingde, was still here, so he couldn't copy even if he wanted to. With great difficulty, he finally wrote a few lines, but he was laughed at by a few of his confidants. It's good enough that you can gather 5,000 cavalrymen from top to bottom, let alone 100,000 cavalrymen. Zhao Min's eyes smiled like crescent moons. When will you come to our Ruyang Palace as a guest? At that time, I'll let you see the power of 100,000 cavalrymen. You guys are clearly pedantic, whether a poem is good or bad. The most important thing is the atmosphere and mood, okay? Forget it. You people won't understand, even if I explain it to you. I'll go see how the preparations are going outside. Song Qingshu fled, but hearing the bell-like laughter of the women in the tent behind him, he couldn't help but snort gloomily. If I knew it would be like this, I would have changed it to riding beauties to Yangzhou, and then I would ride whoever laughed. Soon, Song Qingshu led the army and set off. Along the way, the Golden Snake Camp followed Song Qingshu's instructions and insisted on the principle of attacking the city and attacking the heart. Because the main force of the Green Camp was wiped out and Li Kaxiu was captured, all the prefectures in Jianghuai were in a panic and many surrendered. Even if there was resistance, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot and was quickly crushed. About half a month later, Song Qingshu led the army to attack Yangzhou, which meant that the Golden Snake Camp had occupied all of Li Kaxiu's territory. Because of the turmoil in Jianghuai, the Southern Song dynasty also quickly responded. The army also began to gather in Kaishiji, Nanjing, Zhenjiang, Changzhou, and Suzhou areas. The two sides confronted each other along the river, and the war was imminent. Song Qingshu gathered the senior generals of the Golden Snake Camp to discuss how to deal with the upcoming situation. Most of them advocated to pursue the enemy while they were victorious. The unstoppable momentum of the past few days, in addition to Song Qingshu's display of martial prowess, caused their confidence to swell. Yangzhou was only 500 to 600 miles away from Lin. As long as they could attack Lin, and the Southern Song dynasty would naturally collapse. At that time, the Golden Snake Camp could completely take advantage of the situation to establish a country, and they would be the ministers and founding fathers of the country, enjoying the glory for generations to come. However, there were still some old and prudent people who expressed their opposition, thinking that attacking the Southern Song dynasty was too risky, but they were soon drowned out by the voices of the people who advocated war. The group of people quarreled incessantly, but Song Qingshu did not express his opinion. Instead, he turned to look at Zhao Min and asked, "Miss Zhao, what do you think?" The room quickly quieted down. During this period of time, they had already known Zhao Min's identity and were not fooled by her delicate appearance. After all, she had played countless men in the palm of her hand and even almost wiped out the entire Wulin world of the Central Plains. These deeds were too valiant. Zhao Min in the north and Huang Rong in the south had become the two most resourceful women in the world. There was even a busybody who imitated the crouching dragon and phoenix chicks of the Three Kingdoms period and made a similar saying, "Zhao Min in the north and Huang Rong in the south. If you get one of them, you can stabilize the country. If you get both of them, you can conquer the world." Although it was a joke made by a busybody, it spread far and wide in Jianghu. After all, Guijing had married Huang Rong and turned from a silly boy into a hero of his generation. He also stopped the Mongolian cavalry from marching south in Xiangyang and protected half of the Southern Song dynasty. Needless to say, Zhao Min made a bloody storm in the Wulin world of the Central Plains and made her father, Duke of Ruyang, stand out from countless Mongolian princes and become one of the four most powerful Mongolian princes. However, everyone treated the matter of the two beauties as a joke. After all, either one of them was an extraordinary woman of the present age. To be able to obtain one of them would be a blessing to the ancestors of 18 generations. Moreover, Huang Rong was already married to someone else. With Guijing's upright character, how could he have any relations with Zhao Min? A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Seeing that Zhao Min wanted to say something, the others naturally quieted down. Zhao Min smiled faintly, and her voice was soft and crisp. As a Mongolian commandery princess, I naturally hope that the Golden Snake Battalion can pursue the victory and directly attack Lin. Seeing that she agreed with their side, the pro-war faction immediately became excited and began to criticize those who advocated peace. Zhao. Zhou raised her eyebrows and stood up to say something, but she was stopped by Song Qingshu next to her. Listen to her. Song Qingshu looked calm, and it was hard to tell whether he was sad or happy. As if she had found a confidant, Zhao Min smiled sweetly and changed the topic in an instant. But as a friend of Song Qingshu, I suggest that you make peace with the Southern Song dynasty. Why? The pro-war faction suddenly burst into an uproar and asked one after another. Zhao Min did not directly answer, but asked, "May I ask, how is the fighting power of the Golden Snake Battalion compared to the Mongolian cavalry?" The group looked at each other and finally answered embarrassedly, "I'm afraid not." The Mongolian cavalry had swept the north, the central plains, and the western regions in these years. No matter how conceited they would not be so arrogant to that extent. But we have the Golden Snake King. There was still someone who was not convinced and said weakly, "After all, Song Qingshu is made of flesh and blood." Zhao Min looked at Song Qingshu next to her. "Do you expect him to kill the general in every battle?" Seeing that the group did not speak, Zhao Min said, "The Song dynasty looks weak on the surface, but when it comes to a real fight, it will burst out with amazing power. Our Mongolian army is unstoppable in all directions, but only in the Southern Song dynasty did we suffer the most. The Golden Snake Battalion has just won some victories, but you people are muddle-headed and actually want to attack Lenin. You are really a fool's talk." The group was speechless after being reprimanded by her. Many people thought that if they had such a powerful mistress in the future, then their days would be difficult. Seeing that it was about time, Song Qingshu said, "In addition to what the princess has just said, there are two important reasons. First, the Jianghuai region has just surrendered, and our foundation is not stable. We have not even had time to digest the results of the previous battles, so it is not wise to start another war. Second, the Divine Prefecture has fallen, and the foreign tribes are wantonly. The Southern Song dynasty represents the orthodoxy of the Han people in the world. If we attack the Southern Song dynasty, it will be easy for us to be despised by the Han people in the world. We cannot take this risk." Chapter 12:18. But before that, Song Qingshu changed the topic and looked at the crowd with a sharp gaze. There is something that needs to be dealt with first. His gaze seemed to have substance, and the hearts of everyone present trembled one after another. Although Li Keqiu's attack was sudden, in terms of strength, she is almost on par with our Golden Snake Camp. Why has Golden Snake Camp been retreating since the start of the battle? Song Qingshu's voice gradually became stern as he spoke. The generals looked at each other with shame and lowered their heads in silence. No one dared to provoke him at this time. You don't think about how to retreat from the enemy and spend all your energy on doubting me and doubting me. If you drag me down at a critical moment in the future, then what use do I have for you?" Song Qingshu said angrily. "We heard that our lord was poisoned in Yangzhou, so we suspected that Xia Qingqing and the others had found someone to impersonate our lord." Someone explained in a low voice. "Worried that they would impersonate me?" Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows and interrupted directly, "They are my women. From now on, if I am not present, they can represent me fully." The group of people below cursed in their hearts. Xia Qingqing was clearly Madame Yuan before. Who knows when you two got together? But of course, they did not dare to say this out loud and could only nod in agreement. Song Qingshu looked back at Zhao Min and said, "Miss Zhao, how should we deal with people who openly question the commander and refuse to carry out orders in Mongolia?" Zhao Min was quick-witted and instantly understood his intention. She could not help but curse in her heart. This bastard wants to use me as the bad guy and by people's hearts himself. But this kind of help was only a slight effort, and she did not mind it. She took the opportunity and said coldly, "This kind of person should be used as a sacrifice to establish our prestige." The group of people were so scared that their faces turned pale. They all knelt down and begged for mercy. In truth, they knew very well that their actions would be punished by military law in any well-disciplined army, let alone in Mongolia. However, most of them came from the underworld, and they never paid much attention to these rules. Song Qing-shu was expressionless. His silence made those people more and more flustered. Then, he said lightly, "Seeing that you are loyal to your master, all those who participated in this attempt to force the abdication will be demoted by 3 ranks. If this kind of thing happens again, you will be directly punished by military law." "Thank you, our lord." Zhao Min secretly sneered when she saw the group of people who looked as if they had been granted amnesty. Song Qing-shu, this little fox, was indeed cunning. First, he threatened these people with beheading. Then, when these people heard that they would only be demoted by 3 ranks, not only would they not feel resentful, but they would also be deeply grateful. If he directly set a demotion of 3 ranks, this group would definitely explode. But although she saw through this, she did not want to point it out. She just looked at Song Qing-shu not far away with a smile that was not a smile. Noticing the look in Zhao Min's eyes, Song Qing-shu revealed a tacit smile. But in his heart he was thinking, this group of veterans of the Golden Snake Camp are all Greenwood bandits. They don't have much ability, but they have a lot of bad habits. Moreover, each leader has his own team and his own calculations. This incident of forcing the emperor to abdicate is a warning. It is time to promote some trusted people to replace them. Of course, the whole thing cannot be rushed. Let the frog be boiled in warm water. After everyone retreated, Song Qing-shu asked Zhou, I have something I want to ask you. Last time I was chased in Yangzhou, the secret stronghold of the Golden Dragon Gang in Yangzhou was destroyed. 1. What is the whereabouts of gang leader Jiao? After all, Jiao on was Luo Liru's wife, so Song Qing-shu could not be too intimate with her. Ajio did not want to go anywhere else, so he replied, when Li Keqiu's army attacked the base, Wen'er happened to be away, so she was lucky to escape. She wanted to stay in Yangzhou and wait for an opportunity to save you. Who knew her whereabouts would be exposed? She was seriously injured and had to escape Yangzhou. She is now recovering in Jining. That is good. If she had an accident because of me, then I would feel guilty for the rest of my life. Song Qing-shu was very happy. That Jiao Wen'er is also your woman? Zhao Min suddenly asked. Song Qing-shu's face became hot, and he quickly said, she has a husband. Don't talk nonsense and ruin her reputation. In front of Zhou Zhiruo and Ajio, Song Qing-shu was too embarrassed to admit it. More importantly, keeping their relationship secret gave him a sense of excitement, and it did not hurt her reputation. Really? Zhao Min looked like she was smiling, but she was not smiling. She seemed to have guessed something. Feeling guilty, Song Qing-shu hurriedly changed the topic. Although we're prepared to negotiate peace with the Southern Song, we can't reveal our trump card directly. Otherwise, the officials of the Southern Song Court will take a mile after we give them an inch. Therefore, on my way south, I need you to continue to show an aggressive posture toward the Southern Song, so that they will take the initiative to propose peace negotiations. Looking at the women, Song Qing-shu said, Ajio, when the time comes, the Golden Snake Camp will be under your command. You need to keep pressuring the Southern Song, but you cannot go too far and start a war. You need to be careful. No problem. Ajio had been in charge of the Golden Snake Camp for a long time. Plus, he was born in the royal family, so he had a good sense of politics. He was the best person to do this. Zhiruo, make use of this opportunity. Don't go back to the White Lotus Society. You'll stay here and absorb Li Keqiu's territory. Song Qing-shu knew that Zhou Zhiruo always had a sense of crisis. Instead of letting her return to the White Lotus Society and risk her life, he might as well give her some authority so that she would have more confidence. The world did not know about the relationship between Zhou Zhiruo and Zhou Ziwang. When Zhou Zhiruo sneaked into the White Lotus Society, she did not use her original name. At the same time, she went through a simple disguise. Therefore, no one would know that she was the sect master of the Amaze sect, Zhou Zhiruo. With this disguise, the White Lotus Society would not suspect her for the time being. When Zhou Zhuo heard that her husband wanted her to manage Jiang Huai, Zhou Zhuo was pleasantly surprised. She glanced at Zhao Min and came up with a plan. Sure, but I don't have any experience in dealing with government affairs. Little sister, Zhao happens to be an expert in this aspect. Why don't you let her stay and help me? Zhou Zhuo knew that Zhao Min knew too many of Song Qingshu's secrets. Song Qingshu did not dare to let Zhao Min leave before he took any measures. But if he let the vixen Zhao Min follow him all day, it was hard to guarantee that the two of them wouldn't hook up. The best way was to keep her under his watch. Before Song Qingshu could say anything, Zhao Min jumped up. Absolutely not. Zhou Zhuo blinked innocently. Does Miss Zhao hate me that much? You're not willing to help me at all? Don't pretend to be so pitiful in front of me. Do you think I don't know what you're planning? Zhao Min snorted coldly. If I fall into your hands, I'll lose a layer of skin even if I don't die. Zhou Zhuo put on a wronged look as if she was so sad that she was about to cry. So in Miss Zhao's heart, I'm so unbearable. Her attitude made Zhao Min feel disgusted. She shivered all over. Don't be disgusting. How about goosebumps? The two women quarreled fiercely. Song Qingshu was also lost in thought. It was really inconvenient to take Zhao Min with him to the southern song. The longer she stayed with him, the more secrets she would know. It was a good idea to let her stay in Yangzhou. Besides, with Zhou Zhuo watching, he was not afraid that she would run away. Although Zhao Min was resourceful, Zhou Zhuo was also good at scheming. At the same time, she had the advantage of martial arts. Otherwise, the two women would not have been evenly matched for so many years. However, the only problem now was that if he handed over Zhao Min to Zhou Zhuo, she would definitely suffer a lot. Although Zhou Zhuo was his wife, he did not want Zhao Min to be wronged too much. Unfortunately, no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't think of a good way to satisfy both sides. Looking at the two women who were still bickering, Song Qingshu's heart suddenly lit up. Why was he blindly worrying? With Zhao Min's intelligence, how could she not have a way to protect herself? What's more, Zhou Zhuo still needed her help to deal with government affairs, which was enough for the two women to argue. Well, let's do it. Miss Zhao, you stay and help Zhuo. While I come back from the southern song, I will accompany you to find the antidote for the 3-corpse brain pill. Song Qingshu promised. Zhao Min frowned slightly. Obviously, she was hesitating whether to accept it or not. Song Qingshu continued. I know what you are worried about. Zhuo, during this time, you are not allowed to bully Miss Zhao. Zhou Zhuo smiled slightly. Don't worry, I will treat Miss Zhao well. Her tone was strange. Not to mention Zhao Min. Even Song Qingshu realized that her words were deliberately vague. He had to point to Ajio beside him and said, Miss Zhao, when the time comes, you can find Ajio if you need any help. Zhao Min's eyes lit up, and then she was relieved. Well, I will reluctantly stay and help you clean up the mess here. Because the situation on both sides of the river was very tense, Song Qingshu was worried that a little carelessness would really lead to a fight, so he did not dare to delay. He arranged a little matters in Yangzhou and left that night. Song Qingshu was well aware that he could not take the initiative to propose peace negotiations. Otherwise, the Southern Song dynasty would see through the real situation, and it would be extremely disadvantageous to the Golden Snake camp at the negotiating table. However, it was tricky for the Southern Song dynasty to take the initiative to propose peace negotiations, so he needed a middleman to mediate. Considering the status, weight, and feasibility, the most suitable candidate was Han Xingzhou. However, Song Qingshu did not directly go to Lin to find Han Xingzhou. After all, he and Han Xingzhou had only met once in Yangzhou, and they were not deep friends. Although they had a good chat at that time, things had changed with the passage of time. He did not know what Han Xingzhou's attitude was now. Song Qingshu was not afraid of any danger. After all, with his current cultivation, even if Han Xingzhou turned hostile, he had no ability to keep him. What he was afraid of was alerting the enemy at such a delicate time. At that time, it would be impossible for him to find another middleman. Then I'll find another middleman to test Han Xingzhou. Song Qingshu quickly came up with an idea. He bypassed Lin and and continued south to the Shawnee's 6 families. Special thanks to King of Meat Pigeon, Maple Iron, Waymo, Call Me Peasant, Sand Tells the Wind, Soul Returns to Dreams, Faded Cloud, and Breeze Kong, and other book friends for their support. At the same time, thank all book friends for their monthly tickets and subscriptions. In addition, today's public account book friend, 11, left a message saying that he read the pirated version and then tipped 100 yuan at the end of the article. He also said that the money was not much. Chapter 1219. Traveling Through the Night. Song Qingshu finally arrived at Shawnee's City on the morning of the 3rd day. He asked a passerby and found out that the 6 families were all famous families in Shawnee's City, so he easily found the place. Tianxiang Novel 2, he asked the servant to help pass the message while Song Qingshu stood at the door and waited. Originally, he was most worried that Lu Guining would not be here. Fortunately, from the reaction of the servant, Lu Guining had already returned to the mansion. Song Qingshu stood at the door and looked around. He couldn't help but sigh that the 6 families were indeed the most prosperous families in Shawnee's City. Whether it was the location or the size of the 6 families, they were all first-class existences. Behind him came the squeaking sound of the door opening. Song Qingshu thought that it was Lu Guining coming out and subconsciously turned around. I didn't expect you to come out so fast. Seeing the person in front of him clearly, Song Qingshu was also startled. He saw a young girl in white standing in front of him. Her skin was slightly yellow, but she had an oval face and looked very beautiful and charming. The morning sun shone on her face through the leaves. Her cheeks were flushed, and her thin red lips were slightly curled up. Even Song Qingshu, who was used to seeing beautiful women, secretly sighed in admiration. What a beautiful girl with bright eyes and white teeth. However, he quickly noticed her leg. From the way she walked, she seemed to have a slight limp. He couldn't help but feel pity. The young girl excitedly went out and didn't expect to see a man standing at the door. She was caught off guard and was startled. When she found that the other party was looking at her from head to toe, his extremely aggressive gaze made her feel as if she was naked. She was immediately displeased. When she saw the other party's gaze fall on her limp leg, she couldn't help but become angry. She had a limp leg because she tried to be brave when she went to pick flowers from a tree and broke her leg. Then, she encountered an enemy who came to find her, so the injury didn't heal properly and left a root cause. This matter had always been a taboo in her heart. She hated people showing pity in their eyes because of this matter. She didn't know how many conflicts she had with people in Shawnee's City. Where did this scoundrel come from? Are you looking at me? The young girl put her hands on her waist and scolded fiercely. Song Qingshu frowned, thinking that this little girl had such a bad temper. Now, he naturally disdained to lower himself to the same level as the other party. He smiled faintly, turned his face away, and continued to wait for the 6 winners to come out. Are you deaf or mute? Seeing that he didn't answer, the girl became even angrier. Song Qingshu turned around and said, "Little girl, you're still young. You'd better watch your mouth. Otherwise, if you provoke someone you can't afford to provoke, you'll be the one to suffer." The condescending look in the other party's eyes made the young girl even angrier. Who do you think you are? Do I need you to lecture me? Lai Fu, how can we allow some Tom, Dick, and Harry to block the road in front of our number 6 house? Hurry up and blast them away. Soon, a few guards at the entrance were alerted. They ran out and surrounded Song Qingshu. 7th young miss. This person is here to look for the 3rd young master. The one called Lai Fu sized up Song Qingshu and whispered to the young girl, "Looking for 3rd brother?" The white-clothed young girl frowned and waved her hand. It must be some Jianghu ruffian coming to ask for money from 3rd brother. Blast him away. The guards looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. The person in front of them was dignified and didn't look like those Jianghu ruffians from before. If he really was the 3rd young master's friend, and they beat him up, then what would they do? On one side was the 3rd young master, and on the other side was the 7th young Mississippi. They couldn't afford to offend either side. It was really like when gods fought, mortals suffered. Song Qingshu said coldly, The reason I looked at you like that just now was because I can cure your leg. But now, even if you kneel down and beg me, I won't cure it for you." Hearing him mention her lame leg again, the white-clothed young girl became even angrier. "You don't know how many famous doctors have been helpless, but you're still boasting shamelessly at such a young age. Lai Fu, what are you standing there for? Beat him up for me." Yes, seventh young miss. Even if the third young master blamed them, it was a matter for the future. The group of guards were still intimidated by the tyrannical power in front of them. They all rolled up their sleeves and raised their whistling sticks, ready to surround him. Song Qingshu stood there calmly. His eyes were half open and half closed, as if he didn't see the people surrounding him. "Stop!" At this time, a loud shout came from the manor. Everyone turned around and saw Lu Guining jogging out. Since the main character had come, the group of guards tactfully retreated. The rest of the matter would be up to the young master and young Mississippi. "Young master, are you all right?" Lu Guining didn't even look at the others. He directly ran to Song Qingshu's side and asked anxiously. The white-clothed young girl revealed a strange expression. Although her third brother wasn't favored by the old ancestor in the manor, he had always been proud and arrogant. In the past, he had dominated Lake Tai. She had never seen him show such a humble expression. Song Qingshu smiled calmly. "Do you think they can hurt me?" Lu Guining looked at the situation. Although he didn't see it for himself, he could roughly guess what was going on. After all, he had been troubled by this seventh young sister for many years. Wu Shuang, quickly come and apologize to Prince Song. Wu Shuang. Song Qingshu's eyes moved. So was her. Although he had a vague guess, he didn't dare to confirm it. After all, the Lu family that Lu Wushuang belonged to in the Return of the Condor Heroes wasn't related to Lu Guaning's family. He didn't expect them to belong to the Shanin's 6 families in this world. Hearing Lu Guaning's words, Lu Wushuang had a look of disbelief. "Third brother, you don't even ask me what happened. You want me to apologize to him?" Lu Guaning's face darkened. "There's no need to ask. It's definitely your fault. You." Lu Wushuang felt wronged. "Third brother, why are you helping an outsider to bully me?" She had always been close to Lu Guaning. When she was in Jianghu and was being chased by Limacho, it was Lu Guaning who brought people to save her. He had also taken good care of her all these years. However, she didn't expect her third brother to seem like a completely different person today. "Quickly apologize." Lu Guaning's voice became more and more severe. Lu Wushuang felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had no choice but to walk in front of Song Qingshu. She bit her lips and said softly, "I'm sorry." Song Qingshu acted as if he didn't feel anything. He purposely moved his ear closer. "Speak louder. I can't hear you." Seeing him move his ear closer, Lu Wushuang almost fainted from anger. She stomped her feet and said with a sobbing tone, "Third brother, you bullied me. I'll go find my cousin to teach you a lesson." After saying that, she ignored Lu Guaning's shouts and ran away, crying as she disappeared into the distance. "Young master, this is your first time coming here, and you've already encountered something like this. Young master, please excuse me." Lu Guining wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "It's fine." As Song Qingshu walked in, he asked casually, "Is the cousin that your younger sister mentioned surnamed Chung?" Lu Guining's expression changed. "Yes, her surname is Chung, and her name is Ying. She's the last disciple of the Eastern heretic Huang Yaoshi. She just happened to come back to visit her family. Wu Shuang went out early this morning to pick her up." Song Qingshu seemed to have thought of something interesting. "Huang Yaoshi's last disciple? Speaking of which, you still have to call her martial aunt?" Lu Guining's father, Lu Chengfeng, was also Huang Yaoshi's disciple. Therefore, Lu Guining was naturally 1 generation younger than Cheng Ying. Lu Guining smiled bitterly. "This can't be helped. She's obviously much younger than me, but she's my elder. Fortunately, she's a good person. She doesn't use her seniority to pressure me. We've agreed in private that unless someone from the sect is present, we don't have to stand on ceremony. Speaking of which, she's not only my martial aunt, she's also my sister-in-law." Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face. After a long time, He spat out 4 words, "The noble circle is really messy." Lu Guaning was confused. He thought that he was asking for a reason and explained, "She's Yao Jia's younger cousin. In private, she has to call me brother-in-law." Song Qing-shu finally realized that the two women's surname was Chung. It turned out that they had this relationship. The two of them quickly arrived at Lu Guaning's courtyard. A graceful and beautiful young woman was leaning against the door. If it wasn't Chung Yaojia, who else could it be? She seemed to be waiting for someone. It wasn't until Song Qing-shu appeared in her line of sight that she revealed a sweet smile. She trotted all the way over. Her pretty face was blushing and her eyes were filled with excitement. She sweetly called out, "Gongzi." Half of Song Qing-shu's body went limp. He thought that Chung Yaojia's boundless, bashful expression was really captivating. He wanted to embrace her soft waist, but this was, after all, the 6th mansion. It would not be good if the servants of the mansion saw this. Lu Guaning obviously had the same thought as him. He couldn't help but cough and say, "Let's go inside and talk." Thinking of his wife's affectionate expression as she looked at other men, Lu Guaning couldn't help but feel a bit sour in his heart. However, he remembered that all of this was his own choice. He hurriedly shook his head and dispelled these negative emotions. "When I found out that Gongzi had an accident in Yangzhou, my heart was broken. Fortunately, Gongzi is a good person." After entering the room, Chung Yaojia could no longer hold back her excitement. She looked like she was about to cry. Song Qing-shu's heart warmed. He said, "I haven't thanked Brother Lu for helping me in Yangzhou." Lu Guaning hurriedly said, "Gongzi is too polite. We're limited by our status and can only do that much. I hope Gongzi won't take offense." Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "I don't even have the time to thank you. How can I take offense? Gongzi has done us a great favor. What we did is nothing." Lu Guaning smiled bitterly. "That's right. Why did Gongzi come to Shanin at this time?" Only then did Song Qing-shu explain his purpose of coming. Lu Guaning's eyes brightened. "So that's how it is. Gongzi can rest assured. Han Darren is wholeheartedly thinking about the northern expedition against the Jin Kingdom and restoring the country. If there is anyone in the imperial court who doesn't want to start a war with the Golden Snake Camp, it is none other than Han Darren. However, this matter requires the clan leader's intervention. Chung Yaojia, stay here and chat with Gongzi for a while. I'll go and ask the clan leader." Finished speaking, he left in a hurry with an excited face. Only the two of them were left in the room. Chung Yaojia suddenly felt her heart beat faster. Although she didn't look, she knew that Song Qing-shu was sizing her up. His gaze was like a real substance. She didn't know why, but when he stared at her like this, her body somewhat melted. Chapter 1220. Miss Chung was startled and subconsciously tidied up her clothes. She cleared her throat and softly said, "Come in." The door was pushed open with a squeak. It turned out a maid had brought tea. With an outsider present, Miss Chung hurriedly sat up straight and resumed her usual dignified and gentle image of a young mistress. After the maid left, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. "I didn't touch you just now. Why is Madam tidying up her clothes?" Miss Chung blushed and pouted coquettishly. "Gongzi is still as bad as before. You tease me as soon as we meet." Song Qing-shu liked to see her pouting and shy appearance. "I'm a guest in your residence. Why isn't Madam going to serve tea?" Miss Cheng's almond-shaped eyes widened. She looked at the teacup in his hand in confusion. "Didn't I serve you tea?" Song Qing-shu poured away the teacup next to him. "The tea is good. It's a pity that the tackiness of the maid's hands has ruined its artistic conception. Then you can only be thirsty." Knowing that he was deliberately looking for trouble, Miss Chung tenderly snorted with a smile on her face. "I don't know if I have the good fortune to enjoy a cup of tea personally made by Madam." Song Qing-shu looked at her with a smile. Miss Chung blushed and whispered, "Aren't you afraid that the tackiness will ruin the artistic conception?" Song Qing-shu laughed. "The maid's hands are indeed tacky, but Madam's hands are full of spiritual energy." Miss Chung giggled and quickly covered her mouth. "Gongzi's mouth really knows how to win a girl's favor. If I can win Madam's favor, I hope you won't be stingy with a cup of green tea," Song Qing-shu said unyieldingly. Miss Ching rolled her eyes and finally stood up with a red face. She walked over and said, "If Gongzi isn't afraid of the tackiness of my hands, then please drink it." She went to the door and called the maid to bring the tea set and tea leaves. After washing her hands, she warmed the cup and then quickly washed the tea with boiling water. She nodded 3 times. The whole process was neither too fast nor too slow. Her every movement was extremely elegant. Her dress fluttered in the wind, and her wrist seemed to have fused with the white teacup. It was hard to tell whether the porcelain cup was whiter or her wrist was whiter. Miss Chung was concentrating on making tea when she suddenly felt a burly and masculine body press against her from behind. His hands were wrapped around her lower abdomen. She couldn't help but tremble. The heat from the other party's hand passed through her thin dress and spread to her lower abdomen. That heat quickly spread throughout her entire body and blossomed in her body. She felt as if her bones were about to melt. "Don't, there's someone outside." Cheng Yaojia's voice trembled violently. The 6 families were famous wealthy families in Shanin. There were thousands of maids and servants in their mansions. Every madam and young miss was assigned a large number of servants to serve them. Now, there were still many maids standing outside waiting for orders. Madam's body is still so soft. Song Qingshu moved closer to her slender white neck and gently rubbed it with the tip of his nose. He smelled the orchid-like fragrance on her body and felt his whole body was extremely comfortable. With his breath, Cheng Yaojia couldn't hold the tea set anymore. She bit her lips and said with a sobbing voice, "Gongzi, don't make trouble. If someone really saw us, how would Guanyin and I have the face to see others?" There had always been a lot of trouble in this big courtyard. As long as one person saw something, the whole mansion would know in less than half a day. Thinking of the consequences, she shuddered. "Madam, just make the tea. When you're done, I'll let go." Feeling the beautiful curve of her waist and buttocks, Song Qingshu suddenly didn't want to let go. Cheng Yaojia had no choice but to continue making tea. Unfortunately, there was a man behind her causing trouble. How could she display her usual elegant and skilled tea skills? After a while, she finally poured a cup of tea. However, her wrist trembled so much that half of the good tea spilled onto the tray and wasted it. "Gongzi, please have some tea." Cheng Yaojia turned around and held the teacup in front of Song Qingshu. Looking at the sweet-tempered young woman in front of him, whose face was so red that it looked like it was about to bleed, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. "It's not like we haven't been intimate before. Why are you still so shy?" Cheng Yaojia turned her face away and ignored him. She just handed the teacup over again and said, "Gongzi, please have some tea. How can I enjoy foreign's good tea alone?" Song Qingshu gently sucked, and the tea in the cup turned into a stream of water and was sucked into his mouth. Then he reached out and hooked Cheng Yaojia's chin and kissed her moist lips heavily. Gulp, gulp, Cheng Yaojia was caught off guard and swallowed more than half of the tea. Only then did she react and push away the man on top of her. Cheng Yaojia wiped away the water on her lips. She was ashamed and angry. How can you be like this? But what made her feel strange was that she was only afraid of being seen. She didn't feel angry or disgusted. Song Qingshu reached out and pressed his hand on her lips, interrupting her to continue speaking. "Shoo, young Master 6 is back." Cheng Yaojia's delicate body trembled, and she anxiously said, "Then quickly let go of me. I'll come to your room tonight." Song Qingshu moved closer to her ear and said these words. His voice was very provocative. Then he let go of her and sat back in a chair. Although his relationship with Cheng Yaojia was personally acknowledged by Lu Guanyin, Cheng Yaojia was his wife in name. If they were to be intimate in front of him, it wouldn't look good on him. Hearing his words, Cheng Yaojia's heart swayed. She pursed her moist lips and softly snorted. "If you have the ability, go talk to Guanyin." Then she hurriedly turned around and didn't dare to look at him again. At this time, Lu Guanyin had already rushed into the room. Noticing his ugly expression, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Brother Lu, what's wrong?" Lu Guanying's face was ashen. He heavily slammed the table and said, "This is going too far." Cheng Yaojia was frightened and hugged each other. She couldn't help but feel incomparably embarrassed. Guaning, Song Qingshu was much calmer because he knew that Lu Guaning wasn't angry because of the two of them. Sure enough, the other party's next words confirmed his thoughts. The clan leader wasn't at home, so I decided to ask the old madam first, who knew that she was busy greeting guests and didn't have any intention of seeing me. She left me waiting outside. I waited for an hour. I think she did it on purpose and came back on her own. Lu Guaning's hands were trembling as he spoke. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. Before Song Qingshu came, he had already done his homework. The current clan leader of the Shanin six families was Lu Yu's father, Lu Zai. He was once the deputy transport commissioner of Jingxi Road and had already retired. Although the position of the deputy transport commissioner of Jingxi Road was not high, Lu Zai was from a prestigious family. He had a wide circle of friends and was very knowledgeable, so he had a lot of prestige. The old madam that Lu Guaning was referring to as Lu Zai's wife, the Tang family. Her family background was equally illustrious. She was the granddaughter of Tang Jia, who was involved in politics during the early years of Xining. Cheng Yaojia asked curiously, "Who is the guest that the old madam is greeting?" Lu Guaning's face was gloomy. "Isn't it your good cousin, Cheng Yaojia cried out in surprise. Song Qingshu, who was standing to the side, had a faint smile on his face. It seems that the young master's position in these 6 prefectures isn't very high. Lu Guaning's expression became even more unsightly. At this time, a maid suddenly came to report, "Third young master, the old madam wants you to bring your friend to see her." Chapter 12:21. Hearing Lu Guaning's words, the maidservant was stunned. She glanced at Song Qingshu and couldn't help but curse in her heart. Although this Prince Song looks good, what kind of ability does he have at such a young age? He actually wants Madam to pay a visit to him? Our old Madam was personally conferred the title of Lady of the Imperial title by the Emperor himself. Has third young master's brain gone bad from anger? Of course, she didn't dare to say this out loud, but her nonchalant expression was enough to explain everything. Seeing this, Lu Guaning was enraged. He was about to scold the maidservant when Song Qingshu stopped him. "Brother Lu, don't be angry. Since she is Brother Lu's elder, it is only right for me to pay a visit. Young lady, please lead the way." The young maid was dazzled by his bright smile and felt a little dizzy. She suddenly had a good impression of him and thought that the third young master was not as sensible as this guest. She smiled sweetly and said, "Young master, this way please." Lu Guaning was embarrassed. "I'm sorry, young master." After all, Song Qingshu was an overlord of a region. Even people like Han Xingzhou had to be polite to him, and the 6 family heads might not even have a seat in front of Han Xingzhou. "It's fine." Song Qingshu smiled faintly and said thoughtfully, "But Brother Lu doesn't seem to be doing too well in the 6 residences." From all the signs after entering the residence, Lu Guaning was not doing well in the family. "This is all my fault." Cheng Yaojia faintly sighed. "What happened?" Song Qingshu asked curiously. Cheng Yaojia sent the maidservant away and then answered, "This old madam pays great attention to the passing of incense. She likes anyone who can give birth to a child in the entire mansion. She is very strict with the womenfolk who have never had a child. Even her daughter-in-law, who has been married for many years, was divorced by her son. That old woman is really unreasonable," Lu Guaning said indignantly. "Auntie and uncle were so close to each other, but she broke them apart. Moreover, Auntie is not only her daughter-in-law, but also her niece. She's also from the Tang family. How heartless." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "Is the uncle you mentioned an online game?" "Yes." Lu Guaning nodded and said, "Uncle is as talented as anyone in history. At the same time, he is skilled in both the pen and the sword. Who knew that he couldn't even decide his own marriage? It's really..." Sigh. Although Lu Yu was his uncle in terms of seniority, the two of them were about the same age. Their personalities were similar, and their relationship had always been good. After receiving confirmation, Song Qingshu was also filled with emotion. The tragic love story between Yu and Tang, one had been passed down for thousands of years. He did not expect that he would be able to witness it when he transmigrated to this world. Because my stomach didn't respond, old Madam ordered Guining to divorce and marry someone else. Guining refused to obey and even talked back to old Madam. Because of this, old Madam has always disliked Guining. She said that everything was my fault. Cheng Yaojia said as tears flowed down her face. How can you be blamed? Lu Guining hurriedly comforted his wife. At the same time, he smiled bitterly at Song Qingshu and said, Gongzi, now you understand why I asked you for help before. Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face as he thought to himself, I can't wait for more of this kind of alluring help. However, he said, your old mistress seems to value Cheng a lot. Since young mistress and Cheng Ying are cousins, why does she treat you two so differently? Gongzi, you don't know. Cheng Yaojia explained softly. Cheng Ying's aunt, Cheng Miaojing, is the wife of Lu Wendy, the mayor of Xiangyang. Lu Wendy was born in the Lu family of Donglai. Old Madam's Tang family and the Lu family of Donglai have always been on good terms, so she treats Cheng Ying like her own granddaughter. I am just Cheng Ying's cousin. I have no relationship with the Lu family. Lu Guining, who was standing to the side, curled his lips and said, Humph, it sounds nice to say that it is a family friend. In fact, it is because the Lu family is now so powerful that she wants to get close to them. Lu Wendy was now an official in charge of Jinghu. The Lu family was in charge of nearly 1/3 of the national defense forces of the Southern Song dynasty. Not to mention old Madame Tang. Even Ling Tusi wanted to marry his daughter into the Lu family. Huang Rong also wanted to marry Guofu to the young master of the Lu family. Cheng Yaojia hurriedly pulled her husband's sleeve and said, Guining, be careful with what you say. Lu Guining sneered and said, Prince Song is not an outsider. There is nothing to hide. In fact, in addition to the power of the Lu family, old Madam also took a fancy to Cheng Ying's identity as the last disciple of Peach Blossom Island. In recent years, many people in the court have been cultivating to become immortals. They are proud to get Huang Yaoshi's pills. However, Grandmaster is neither good nor evil. He is moody and his whereabouts are erratic. Therefore, many people have turned their attention to his last disciple. Cheng Ying has always been good-tempered. Naturally, she is much easier to talk to than Grandmaster. After all, old Madam is old and afraid of death. She just wants to get some elixirs from Peach Blossom Island to prolong her life. Song Qingshu sensed that he had no respect for old Madame Tang in his tone. Obviously, he had suffered a lot from her and the family over the years. He smiled and said, Aren't you also a disciple of Peach Blossom Island? Lu Guining smiled bitterly and said, Because of the twin killers of the Dark Winds, my father and several martial uncles were kicked out of the sect by Grandmaster. Unfortunately, they all died tragically in Jianghu. My father was lucky enough to return to the sect, but my father is old and his legs are broken. He has a lot of things to do. How can he return to Peach Blossom Island? He can only get the title of a disciple of Peach Blossom Island. My father is like this. I am just a disciple who has not learned a single move of Peach Blossom Island. How can I be compared to Cheng Ying, who is a true disciple? Hearing the bitterness in his tone, Song Qingshu comforted him and said, Brother Lu, don't worry. It won't be long before I can make you proud. Not to mention the small Lu family. Few people in the entire Southern Song dynasty will dare to look down on you. Lu Guining's eyes lit up. He cupped his hands and said, Young master is a dragon among men. It is my great fortune to know you. Song Qingshu secretly thought that Lu Guining's kidney meridian had been damaged by a freak combination of factors and he could no longer be a man. Therefore, he turned his mind to his career. Otherwise, with his relationship with Cheng Yaojia, no matter how magnanimous he would not feel lucky. As the three chatted, they arrived at old Madame Tang's courtyard. After being informed by the maid, she did not leave them outside and let them in directly. After entering the door, Song Qingshu habitually glanced at the situation in the room. He saw a gray-haired old lady sitting on a chair in the middle, surrounded by two young girls who were chatting happily. One of the two girls was dressed in white and the other in green. They were both slender and graceful, with slender waists. They were very charming. Old Madame Tang's clothes were meticulously ironed and neatly ironed. She even had makeup on her face. Her red lips and wrinkled face made her look like a monster. Song Qing-shu curled his lips and looked away without hesitation. He thought to himself that the old madam of the Jiao residence was much kinder at the same age. Old Madame Tang, on the other hand, seemed to be the type of person who was very strong and difficult to get along with. He had seen one of the two young girls around her not long ago. The girl in white was Lu Wushuang. She seemed to not see the people coming in and only whispered in the old lady's ear. She did not even look at him. It was good that she did not look at him, so as to avoid trouble. Song Qing-shu did not mind and quickly moved his eyes to the girl in green next to her. Song Qing-shu's eyes lit up. He saw that the girl's face was crystal clear, her skin was as white as snow, and there was a small dimple on her oval face. She was a little shy. Although she was not as elegant as Xiao Long Nu and Zishan Dragon King, she was still a very beautiful girl. As if sensing that someone was looking at her, the girl in green looked in Song Qingshu's direction and nodded slightly to him. Her eyes were as clear and gentle as clear water. Young master has already seen seventh sister. The other girl is Cheng Ying. Lu Guaning whispered to Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu nodded secretly. Sure enough, it was as quiet and reserved as the original. Cheng Ying's temperament was really unforgettable. Bang! At this moment, he heard a muffled sound. It turned out to be old Madame Tang slamming her walking stick on the ground. Guaning, why is your friend so unruly? Does he not know how to kneel and greet his elders? Lu Guaning was shocked and hurriedly said, Old Madam, Prince Song. Before he could finish, old Madame Tang slammed her walking stick on the ground again and directly cut him off. Doesn't he have a mouth? Does he need you to speak for him? Song Qingshu laughed involuntarily. This old madam was used to being a local tyrant in Shanin City. Did she think that everyone had to be subservient to her? His heart skipped a beat, and he looked to the side. He saw Lu Wushuang with her chin raised, a gloating expression on her face. Cheng Ying, who was beside her, had an awkward expression. Her eyes seemed to be able to speak as she looked at him apologetically. At a glance, Song Qingshu could roughly guess what was going on. Obviously, Lu Wushuang was inverting right and wrong in front of old Madame Tang. Then, because of the relationship between Lu Wushuang and Cheng Ying, old Madame Tang wanted to take this opportunity to give Cheng Ying face. Unexpectedly, Cheng Ying had no such thoughts. However, she had always been a gentle person. Since old Madame Tang had spoken, as a junior, she couldn't say anything. She could only apologetically look at the young man not far away, hoping that he would be wrong for the time being and deal with old Madame Tang first. Then she would mediate. Old Madame Tang saw that Song Qingshu was looking around as if he hadn't heard her words. How could she, who had long been the most arrogant person in the family, stand this kind of contempt? She couldn't help but fly into a rage. Didn't you hear what I said? Kneel down and kowtow to greet me. Maybe if I am happy, I won't care about your previous rudeness. Old madam, Cheng Yaojia couldn't help but speak up. Shut up. When did you have the right to speak here? You're just a chicken that can't lay eggs. Old Madame Tang sneered. This time, even Cheng Ying frowned. Cheng Yaojia's face was even paler. Her body swayed as if she would fall at any time. Lu Guaning hurriedly supported his wife. His face was full of resentment, but he couldn't do anything due to his status in the family. Song Qingshu was finally angry. He directly moved a chair to the side and sat down. He didn't even look at old Madame Tang across from him. He just coldly said, You want me to kowtow to greet you? You're not qualified. You should thank the heavens that I didn't make you kneel to greet me. Today, the WeChat account was updated with pictures of Duan Jingxuan's lovers. Speaking of which, Monk likes each of these pictures more than the other. I don't know which one you like the most. However, seeing that the comments are all a group of gentlemen who often ask for this and that, Monk felt a bit pressured. In addition, recently, the WeChat account had gradually improved the character pictures. Sending a name would automatically reply with a picture of the corresponding female character. Here, I have to apologize to many of the previous readers. In the past, there were such automatic replies, but only a few people had pictures. Now, at least 2/3 of the pictures have been completed. The remaining few characters, monk, would be gradually added. Chapter 1222. What? Except for Lu Guining and Cheng Yaojia. Everyone in the room was stunned. Old Madame Tang's words carried weight in the Lu mansion. Had she ever been contradicted like this? Old Madame Tang's first reaction was not to be angry, but to think that she had misheard. It was not until she saw other people's reactions that she realized what she had heard. She could not help but fly into a rage out of shame. Suddenly, she noticed Lu Guining's expression and felt that he was gloating. She was so angry that she directly threw the teacup on his head. Lu Guining, what kind of scoundrel friends do you have? How can you bring such a person into your home? Do you want to be kicked out of your home? Lu Guining's expression changed in an instant. It must be known that being expelled from the ancestral shrine was the most serious punishment in this world. From then on, there would be no ancestors to worship, and they would not be able to return to their roots after death. However, the humiliation of having hot tea poured on his head made his veins bulge. If it were not for his wife holding him tightly, he might have directly turned hostile. Song Qingshu's expression turned even colder when he saw Lu Guining's predicament. At this moment, Cheng Ying hurriedly stood in between the two sides and quickly said, "Old Madam, Third Brother's friends are all people of the pugilistic world. People of the pugilistic world are used to being free and unrestrained, unlike the Lu family who are so particular about etiquette. Especially some people with great ability, they regard red tape as nothing, so their words were a bit offensive. I hope old madam can forgive them." Cheng Yaojia could not help but look at her gratefully. She knew that her cousin had come out to plead for the two of them because of her. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh at Cheng Ying's unique temperament. She could make people feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze at any time. The tense atmosphere in the room, which was originally filled with gunpowder and swords drawn, was mostly resolved with just a few words from her. Old Madame Tang's expression eased a little. She snorted, "What great ability can a person like him have?" Worried that the two would quarrel again, Cheng Ying hurriedly said, "You can't judge a book by its cover. This young master may be able to cure Sister Wu Shuang's leg injury." At the same time, she gave Song Qingshu an apologetic look, indicating that he should suffer a little and let old Madame's anger dissipate first. Song Qingshu frowned, not because he was afraid of the old woman, but because Cheng Ying's eyes seemed to be able to speak, making it hard for him to harden his heart and refuse. Who would have thought that old Madame Tang would be the first to open her mouth and ridicule? Even a godlike figure like Huang Yaoshi could do nothing about Wu Shuang's leg injury. Him? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? His tone was full of contempt. Song Qingshu didn't get angry. He just said lightly, "I can cure her, but I won't cure her." Cheng Ying's eyes lit up, and she hurriedly asked, "May I ask what young lord has in mind?" When she lived in Lu Wushuang's house, Lu Wushuang's parents treated her like their own daughter. Even when Li Macho came to seek revenge, they gave her half of their only life-saving handkerchief. She would remember this kindness for the rest of her life. Unfortunately, both husband and wife had passed away, leaving Lu Wushuang alone in this world. Naturally, she loved her cousin dearly. Lu Wushuang was such a beautiful girl, but her only regret was that her leg was a little lame because of the injury she suffered when she was young. Therefore, Cheng Ying had been trying to cure her leg all these years, but unfortunately, she had never succeeded. Since it was related to her cousin's injury, she no longer cared about old Madame Tang's face. She eagerly looked at Song Qingshu. Although the endless tenderness in Cheng Ying's eyes seemed to be able to melt even the most stone-hearted man, Song Qingshu had been through a lot, so how could he be affected by her? He still replied unmoved, "No treatment." Lu Wushuang originally didn't like him because of the previous matter, so she hurriedly pulled Cheng Ying back. "He is just bluffing." My leg injury has been so many years. How can he cure it? Cousin, you took it seriously. Even if he really wants to tell you now, he can't. This. Qingying was also a little hesitant. After all, her master, Huang Yaoshi, was one of the 5 masters and an expert in the art of Qi Huang. But even he couldn't cure her cousin's leg injury. Although this person was handsome and didn't look like a swindler, he was still a little too young. Lu Guanyin finally found an opportunity to interrupt. As long as young master says he can cure it, then he can definitely cure it. His tone was full of confidence. Lu Wushuang knew that her third brother would not speak without thinking. She was suddenly surprised and doubtful. Could it be that this person really has such great ability? Qingying frowned and asked uncertainly, but at that time, Master also couldn't do anything. Lu Guanyin replied, Great Master couldn't, but that doesn't mean that Prince Song can't. The people of Peach Blossom Island had always regarded Huang Yaoshi as a celestial being, but Lu Guanyin had seen Song Qingshu's skills and combined it with various Jianghu information. He speculated that Song Qingshu's martial arts were probably above Huang Yaoshi's. Qingying didn't expect to receive such information. She turned her head and quietly looked at the man in front of her, wondering who he was. Why did Lu Guanyin trust him so much? In fact, there's no harm in telling you a little. Even if you know the method, you won't be able to learn it. Song Qingshu suddenly said, If you want to cure her lame leg, you need to use a special method to break her wound and reconnect it. Then you need to use the solitary yang finger to open up her blocked and withered meridians. Finally, you need to apply the black jade intermittent ointment to the wound and fix it. After half a month, she will naturally be back to normal. Qingying's beautiful eyes lit up. As Huang Yaoshi's last disciple, she was naturally knowledgeable. Huang Yaoshi had thought of this method before, but he didn't know the solitary yang finger. Besides, using the solitary yang finger to open up the blocked meridians required a lot of internal energy. If the practitioner was lucky, they would not be able to fight for 6 months. Huang Yaoshi had always been a proud and arrogant person and did not owe Reverend Eating such a big favor, so he gave up on the idea. Instead, he concentrated on researching and improving the whirlwind sweeping leaf kick to see if it could help Lu Wushuang recover. In the past, Huang Yaoshi broke the legs of his fellow disciples because Mei Chaofeng had betrayed his sect. Feeling guilty, he created a special technique called the whirlwind sweeping leaf kick. If a crippled person meditated and practiced according to this technique every day, they would be able to walk again in 5 or 6 years. But although the whirlwind sweeping leaf kick was magical, it could only help a crippled person walk again. It was still not enough to make them look like a normal person. As for the black jade healing ointment, it was a legendary medicine in the western regions. Qingying had only heard Huang Yaoshi mention it once. Now that she heard Song Qingshu describe it in such a professional way, she believed him. Qingying hastily said, What would it take for you to help me? As long as I can do it, I won't hesitate to do it. Song Qingshu calmly replied, You can't do what I want. Qingying smiled. If you don't tell me, how do you know I can't do it? She was Huang Yaoshi's last disciple and had been the guest of honor of the Southern Song dynasty for many years, so she had a bit of pride in her heart. Do you really want me to tell you? Song Qingshu's expression suddenly became very strange. Young master, please tell me. Noticing his faint smile, Qingying was secretly alarmed. She thought, is he going to make some unreasonable request? Chapter 1223. Hearing his words, the Tang family couldn't help but be furious. Qingying also looked unhappy, thinking that this person really didn't know what was good for him. Lu Guanyin and his wife looked at each other and couldn't help but sigh at Song Qingshu's valiance. At the same time, they were secretly delighted. He and his wife had suffered a lot from this old woman over the years. Now that Song Qingshu was arguing with her, he could help them vent their anger. Lu Wushuang had been holding back for a long time. At this time, she could no longer suppress the anger in her heart. She stepped forward and shouted, Do you know who the old madam is? Song Qingshu was not moved at all. He just replied lightly, Oh, I'm all ears. Lu Wushuang held her breath. For a moment, she really couldn't think of a way to flatter the old madam. She could only say hurriedly, "The old madam is a madam of the imperial title bestowed by the current emperor. She is also from the Jiangling Tang family." Do you know the Jiangling Tang family? The old madam's grandfather was involved in the political affairs during the Xining era. He was known for his honesty and uprightness. Cheng Ying smiled bitterly in her heart. She thought that her cousin was too simple and straightforward. How could she flatter someone like this? However, she had misunderstood Lu Wushuang. Because the old madam always talked about these deeds, Lu Wushuang subconsciously used them in a hurry. Song Qingshu didn't show regret or fear like Lu Wushuang expected. Instead, he glanced at her and said lightly, "I'll add 30 more kowtows." Lu Wushuang was in disbelief at first. Then she shouted angrily, "Who do you think you are?" The old madam finally couldn't hold back anymore. She slammed her walking stick heavily on the ground. "Wushuang, don't talk nonsense with this kind of person. Someone drag this person away from me and give him 80 floggings." Cheng Ying hurriedly said, "Old madam, I'm afraid even a strong man will die after 80 floggings. I'm afraid his thin body won't be able to withstand it." As Huang Yaoshi's last disciple, her martial arts skill was considered very good among her peers. A moment ago, she quietly observed this somewhat arrogant young master, but she could not detect any internal energy fluctuation from his body. Who would have thought that at such a young age, he had already reached the realm of returning to one's true essence? She thought he did not know any martial art at all. Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise, thinking that she was kind-hearted. Old Madame Tang frowned when she heard Cheng Ying's advice. She was displeased, but when she thought of the other party's identity, she snorted and said, "I'll give Miss Cheng some face and change the punishment to 60 strokes." Cheng Ying smiled bitterly, thinking that if he were to be flogged 60 times, he would most likely be crippled. But in the end, she couldn't persuade him any further. She could only think of teaching this arrogant young man a lesson. If worst comes to worst, she could take out some of the Peach Blossom Island's elixirs and save his life. When they heard old Madame Tang shout, a dozen burly guards rushed in and aggressively surrounded Song Qingshu. However, Song Qingshu acted as if he did not see it. Not only did he not avoid it, but he also picked up a cup of tea on the table and drank it leisurely. "Stop!" Lu Guining hurriedly rushed out to stop those people. What kind of joke was this? He was well aware of Song Qingshu's martial arts. If he were to make a move, these people would have no way out. Old Madame Tang, however, thought that he was protecting the other party. She was so angry that she smashed the teacup on the floor. "Lu Guining, you traitor! Get lost!" Lu Guining suppressed his anger and explained, reporting to old Madame, "This young master is. Suddenly, he did not know how to explain. At this point, even if he revealed Song Qingshu's identity, with her temper, there was no way she would let it go so easily. Just as he was in a dilemma, a surprised voice suddenly came from the door. "What are you all doing?" Song Qingshu was still leisurely drinking his tea. Not even his eyes moved. The rest of the people in the room turned to look and saw an old man and a middle-aged man standing at the door. It was Lu Zai, the clan leader, and Lu Yu, who was then the Privy Council's secretary. Old Madame Tang seemed to have seen her savior. She immediately burst into tears. "Master, you have to help me." Lu Zai was shocked. What happened? Lu Yu was also bewildered. He couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. "Prince Song, it's you?" Everyone was taken aback by this turn of events. Even old Madame Tang stopped crying and looked at them in confusion. "Wu Guan, who is this person?" Lu Zai couldn't help but ask curiously when he saw his usually calm son like this. Lu Yu said with a smile, "Father, weren't we talking about his deeds on the way here?" "Talking about his deeds, and his surname is Song." Lu Zai's eyes suddenly lit up. Could it be the Golden Snake King Song Qingshu, Prince Song? Only then did Song Qingshu stand up and bow. "Greetings, Uncle Lu. Greetings, Brother Lu." He had always admired Lu Yu very much. Moreover, when he was poisoned in Yangzhou City, Lu Yu had saved him, so he was naturally polite to him. The reason why he had confronted old Madame Tang before was because he had read about the sad love between Lu Yu and Tang Wan in his previous life. It was caused by this old woman's outstanding obstructions. It just so happened that she was deliberately making things difficult for him this time, so he naturally wouldn't be polite to her. Secondly, this trip to the south this time was to make an appointment with the Southern Song dynasty. If his attitude was too humble, it would be easy for others to guess his real trump card. If that happened, the Southern Song dynasty would know that he wanted to negotiate peace, and then the following negotiations would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, he used the matter of old Madame Tang to send a strong signal to the outside world, just in time to confuse the relevant people's judgment. Previously, I heard from Wu Guan that the Golden Snake King who took the general's head in the midst of thousands of soldiers was an elegant young master. This old man didn't quite believe it, but now that I've seen him, he's indeed a talented man. He's even a few years younger than Wu Guan's description. Lu Zai laughed. Liu also smiled. Prince Song has always been a godlike figure. Those people in the Privy Council said that the battle report from Jiang Huai was exaggerated, but I've personally seen Prince Song in action. I absolutely believe that he can capture Li Kaxiu in the midst of thousands of soldiers by himself. Song Qingshu lightly smiled. The two of you are too polite. Previously, Brother Lu saved us in Yangzhou, so it's not too rude for us to pay a visit this time, right? Not at all, not at all. Young master, please take a seat, Lu Zai said with a smile. It should be known that the Lu family had been declining by his generation. He had always been thinking about how to revive the Lu family's former glory. Originally, he had taken advantage of the relationship between Lu Feiqing and Li Kaxiu to get in touch with Han Xingzhou. Just as he was about to rise to the top, who knew that what happened in Yangzhou would ruin his many years of planning. Having lost his value, Han Xingzhou's attitude towards the Lu family had clearly become much colder. Just as Lu Zai was worrying about this, Song Qingshu appeared in front of him. He keenly realized that the Lu family's comeback depended on this young man. Apart from Lu Guaning and Miss Cheng, everyone else in the room was dumbfounded by the sudden change in the situation. Cheng Ying's beautiful eyes shone. So he's the Golden Snake King who has been in the limelight in Jianghu for the past 2 years? Even her prideful master had once praised this rising star and felt that it was a pity that they didn't have the fate to meet him. What's this? Lu Zai and his son noticed the strangeness in the room and couldn't help but be shocked. Old Madame Tang's face instantly turned red. Although she was usually hot-tempered in the family, she was not a fool. When she saw the expressions of her husband and son, she instantly realized that this young man's identity was absolutely noble. What's more, she had heard about what happened in Yangzhou from her son. She knew that even a person like Han Xingzhou was very polite to him. But after all, she had been living like a princess for decades. She couldn't immediately smile at him. Just as she was feeling awkward, Song Qingshu said, "Nothing. I was just chatting happily with old Madame Tang. Don't you think so, old madam?" Song Qingshu knew that enough was enough. After all, he didn't come to find trouble. He still had to cooperate with the Lu family and teach old Madame Tang a lesson. After all, this was a world that paid attention to ethics. Lu Yu would definitely help his mother. It wouldn't be good if both sides couldn't get out of the situation. Old Madame Tang was startled. After all, she was from a prestigious family. She quickly reacted and took the opportunity to say, "Yes, yes, yes. We were just talking about the injury on Wu Shuang's leg." Wu Shuang quickly go and kowtow to Prince Song and beg him to help. Since the other party had saved her face, she naturally understood the principle of returning a favor. After thinking about it, she could only let Lu Wushuang suffer. "Oh, madam?" Lu Wushuang's eyes suddenly turned red. She didn't expect the world to change so quickly. Old madam, who was on her side just a moment ago, suddenly changed her attitude. Old Madame Tang glared at her fiercely. "Prince Song is treating your leg. Shouldn't you kowtow a few times? Quickly go." Lu Wushuang looked stubborn. She bit her lips tightly, and a trace of blood seeped out, as if she didn't notice it. She originally wanted to leave, but when she thought of the fact that old Madame had treated her well during her years of living in the Lu mansion, she felt that she would be guilty if the matter just now was exposed because of her, and old madam was disgraced because of her. Cheng Ying couldn't stand it anymore. She stood up and said crisply, I have heard that Golden Snake King is loyal and courageous. He is a great hero admired by the world. Why should you lower yourself to the level of a little girl? Song Qing-shu replied lightly, I won't lower myself to the level of her. But according to etiquette, it's not wrong for her to kowtow to me. Cheng Ying asked curiously, What do you mean? Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. Miss Liu is Li Macho's disciple, and Li Macho is my subordinate. Even she has to bow to me when she sees me, not to mention her disciple. Hearing this, everyone in the room was shocked. As members of the Liu clan, they naturally had a deep impression of Li Macho. They hated and feared Li Macho. Li Macho had killed Liu Zhenyuan's family, so they naturally wanted to avenge their clansmen. But Li Macho's martial arts were too strong. She had killed many of their experts, so the Liu mansion had to give up on the idea of revenge. Even a demonist like Li Macho was his subordinate. The Liu mansion's respect for Song Qing-shu increased by another level. Chapter 1224. Liu Wushuang and Li Macho had a blood feud. How could she kneel to the friend of her enemy? Song Qing-shu was startled. Then he smiled and said, I almost forgot about the grudge between you two. Actually, I have another identity other than Li Macho. I don't know how you should address me under that kind of relationship. In short, I'm your martial uncle's man, so I'm considered as your uncle. You should kowtow to me. Not to mention Liu Wushuang. Even Cheng Ying's expression changed. You're Lady Long's man? Song Qing-shu was initially referring to icy snow. However, Liu Wushuang and Cheng Ying only knew that Li Macho had a junior sister, so they subconsciously thought that it was Xiao Long knew. He thought for a while and didn't correct them. After all, Icy Snow's identity was special. If he explained it to them, they might think that he was making it up. In a sense, yes. Anyway, he and Xiao Long Nu were already intimate with each other. He had touched her almost all over her body. How could he allow her to marry another man? After getting his confirmation, Cheng Ying exclaimed, How is this possible? Lady Long loves Brother Yang so much. There's nothing impossible in this world, Song Qing-shu replied faintly. Moreover, Yanghua has a fiancé now. What? Liu Wushuang covered her chest. She felt as if she was hit by a heavy blow. Cheng Ying also felt lost. May I know who Brother Yang's fiancé is? Cheng Ying recovered first and asked with difficulty. Song Qing-shu didn't answer. Instead, he said, Today, I came to the Liu residence to discuss official business with Uncle Liu and the others. He didn't finish his words, but the meaning was clear. He didn't have time to chat with them. All right, I'll kowtow to you. When you're free, tell us about Shadan. Liu Wushuang pushed Cheng Ying away and went to kneel in front of Song Qing-shu. Then she kowtowed heavily. Song Qing-shu was also depressed. He had thought of so many ways to make her submit, but she seemed to have lost her soul when she heard Yanghua's name. Dong, dong, dong. Perhaps it was because of the anger in her heart, or perhaps it was because she heard that Yanghua had a fiancé that her heart was like dead ashes. Every time Liu Wushuang kowtowed, she would hit her head heavily on the ground, making a loud, thudding sound. After a few kowtows, Song Qing-shu's eyes narrowed as he noticed the dark red bloodstains on the floor. He couldn't help but say in a deep voice, All right, you don't need to kowtow anymore. Who knew that Liu Wushuang would stubbornly refuse? No, if I say 30, then 30. Cousin. Cheng Ying knew that it was probably because she heard that Yanghua had a fiancé that she was disheartened and had given up on herself. If she were to continue kowtowing like this, her head might be smashed. He hurriedly tried to reach out to pull her, but she shook him off. If I say it's enough, it's enough. She didn't see how Song Qing-shu moved, but Liu Wushuang felt as if there was an invisible wall in front of her, holding her up. Even if she used all her strength, she wouldn't be able to continue. Miss Cheng, take her to rest. Liu Wushuang felt as if a pair of invisible hands had lifted her up from the ground and stuffed her into Cheng Ying's arms. Because Liu Wushuang had used too much strength just now, coupled with the fact that there was blood on her forehead, she suddenly felt dizzy and her whole body swayed. Cheng Ying hurriedly hugged her and said, "Thank you, young Master Song." How could she not see that Song Qingshu was being lenient? At the same time, she was extremely shocked by the cultivation that he had displayed. "Madam will also go into the inner residence to rest. We have something to discuss." After waiting for Cheng Ying to help Lu Wushuang out, Lu Zai also said to old Madame Tang. He had lived for so long. How could he not see that the atmosphere in the room was a bit strange? Thinking about his wife's usual domineering style, he had already vaguely guessed what was going on. Worried that if she continued to stay here, something unforeseen would happen, he simply took the opportunity to send her away. "Yes, master." During this period of time, old Madame Tang had always felt as if there was a thorn on her back. She could not wait to escape. Seeing this, she hurriedly left with her maidservants. "I will also take my leave." It was naturally not convenient for Miss Cheng to stay here. She bowed to everyone and softly said her farewells. "I wonder why Prince Song has come to the Wei residence this time." After chatting for a while, Lu Zai finally could not hold it in anymore. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. "Nothing else, just to thank Brother Wu Guan and Guaning for saving me in Yangzhou last time." As he said this, he took out a scroll and handed it to Lu Yu. "Song Mao knows that Brother Wu Guan is a refined scholar and will certainly not be interested in ordinary gold and silver items. Recently, I happened to obtain a copy of Zhang Su's stomach pain invitation, so I present it to Brother Wu Guan." Not to mention Lu Yu. Even Lu Zai could not help but be moved. Their Lu family was famous for its rich collection of books. The Shuangqing Hall in the residence had collected countless unique, authentic works. Zhang Su's stomach pain invitation just happened to scratch their itch. However, Lu Yu still declined. This stomach pain invitation is really too precious. "Please take it back, young master." Song Qingshu smiled slightly. "No matter how precious it is not as precious as Brother Wu Guan saving me in Yangzhou last time. Song Mao is not versed in literature. It would be a waste of God's gift in my hands." Previously, after taking over Li Kashio's territory, he naturally accepted the rare treasures in the Admiral's residence. Although the stomach pain invitation was precious, he did not feel the pinch when he was generous to others. In that case, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Li really liked this gift. After hesitating for a while, he finally accepted it. Song Qingshu nodded and turned to Lu Guanying, who was beside him, and said with a smile, "As for Guanying, given our relationship, there is no need to be so polite." Of course, not only was Lu Guanying not angry that there was no gift, he was even happier. This was because he knew that this was Song Qingshu deliberately showing his closeness to him and elevating his position in the family. As expected, hearing Song Qingshu's words, Lu Zai and Lu Yu looked at each other with a thoughtful expression. Following this, Song Qingshu did not mention a word about the peace negotiations. He purely chatted with the others. Lu Yu and his son tried to ask in a roundabout way, but did not get any information. After lunch, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "I have long heard that the Shuangqing Hall of your residence has countless books. Back then, the Southern Song Dynasty's inner residence was lacking many books. The imperial edict sought all the books in the world and first ordered Shaoxing Prefecture to come to the Shuangqing Hall to make copies. I wonder if I can go take a look?" "Of course, no problem," Lu Zai hurriedly replied. "Guanying, take Prince Song to the Shuangqing Hall." Song Qingshu shook his head and said, "That is not necessary. I will walk around by myself." Lu Zai was worried that he would neglect him, but his tone did not seem to like company. "Then we will not disturb young master." Song Qingshu nodded and leisurely walked out. After he left, Lu Zai motioned for Lu Yu to close the door. He then pulled Lu Guanying over and asked, "Guanying, do you know why Song Qingshu has come south this time?" Lu Guanying's face was blank. "I do not know. He only said that he came to Jiangnan to relax." Chapter 1225. Lu Zai asked with some uncertainty, "Do you think he came to ask for peace?" Lu Guanying smiled bitterly. It doesn't seem like it. If he came to ask for peace, why would he have a conflict with old Madam before? He was definitely not stupid. Just now, when he saw that Song Qing-shu did not mention a word about the peace talks in front of the two of them, he had already understood the other party's intention of being so high-profile before. What conflict? Lu Zai and his son asked hurriedly. Lu Guining then roughly told them what had happened just now. No wonder I felt the atmosphere in the room was a little strange just now. Lu Zai was silent and then showed a distressed expression. If he wants to ask for peace, his behavior really doesn't seem like it. Lu Yu said, "In my opinion, why don't we inform Han Darren as soon as possible and let him decide on this matter?" Lu Zai nodded. "Yes, we should let Han Darren know about this. How about this, Wu Guan? You take Song Qing-shu to tour around the city and take the opportunity to calm him down. Guanying, you immediately set off to Lin and to see Han Darren and explain the situation here to him." Yes. Lu Guanying was pleasantly surprised. Because of Song Qing-shu, he was getting closer and closer to the core circle. If this continued, he would become Han Qingzhou's confidant sooner or later. It was not impossible for him to enter the palace. After Lu Guanying left excitedly, Lu Zai said to Lu Yu, "Wu Guan, go find Song Qing-shu and take him around Shanin City. I'll go talk to your mother and warn her not to act recklessly during this time." Okay. Lu Yu nodded and also went out to find Song Qing-shu. After Song Qing-shu went out, he did not go to the Shuangqing Hall where the books were stored. Instead, he asked a servant about Cheng Ying and Lu Wushuang's residence. Although the two women lived in the inner residence, because Lu Zai had already sent word to receive him as a distinguished guest, his journey was unimpeded. Before he reached, he could faintly hear Lu Wushuang's sobs coming from the room. "Cousin, Sha Dan already has a fiancé, sob. I thought he had a deep relationship with Xiao Long Nu and they knew each other first, so I let it go. Who knew that now that Xiao Long Nu is gone, he still hasn't considered me and is engaged to another woman, sob, only to hear a gentle voice comforting her. Cousin, don't be too sad. I know Brother Yang's character very well. We only heard about this matter from young Master Song, and now that I think about it, it is too strange. It may not be as he said." Lu Wushuang's spirit was immediately shaken, and his tone seemed to regain some vitality. "That's right. Big Brother Yang loves Lady Long so much. How could he possibly marry someone else? It must be that Song Qing-shu deliberately making things up." There was a hint of bitterness under Cheng Ying's smile. She thought that with Song Qing-shu's reputation in Jianghu, he would not deceive two little girls. However, she did not dare to say this to her cousin, so she picked up a towel and gently wiped her wound. She complained as she wiped. "Why did you kowtow so hard? There's such a big bruise on your forehead." Lu Wushuang pouted and snorted. "I was just angry, and when I thought of Sha Dan's fiancé, I got hot-headed and..." Cheng Ying washed the towel, took out the elixir from Peach Blossom Island and applied it on her forehead. "Don't be so impulsive next time." Fortunately, Prince Song was kind and didn't let you finish kowtowing. Otherwise, you would have knocked your brains out. Lu Wushuang immediately sat up straight and said angrily, "Tui, if it wasn't for that bastard, I wouldn't have been embarrassed in front of so many people." At this time, a teasing voice suddenly came from the door, talking behind someone's back. "I'm afraid it's not the behavior of a lady." The two girls looked at the door in shock. Cheng Ying was in a hurry to help Lu Wushuang in, so he did not have time to close the door. At this time, a handsome young man stood at the door. Who else could it be but Song Qing-shu? Lu Wushuang opened her mouth and wanted to scold him, but when she thought of his reputation in the Jianghu, she thought about the difference in strength between the two of them. She could only curl her lips and swallow the words that were on the tip of her tongue. Cheng Ying's reaction was more indifferent. She smiled lightly and said, "Hiding behind someone's back and eavesdropping on a girl's private conversation. I'm afraid it's not the behavior of a gentleman." Song Qing-shu was startled. He saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, her figure slender, her waist slender, her dignified and beautiful oval face even more elegant and refined. He could not help but sigh. "I have heard that Miss Cheng is gentle and refined, but I did not expect Miss to have such a clever little mouth." Cheng Ying let out a soft sound of surprise. From your tone, you seem to know me? Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. We've known each other for a long time. This time, it was Cheng Ying's turn to be startled. She did not expect that she would have a relationship with him. Hearing him say this, a layer of red unconsciously appeared on her crystal-clear face. How could she know that the reason why Song Qing-shu had known her for a long time was because he had watched the return of the Condor heroes in his previous life, and not because he had feelings for her in this world? Lu Wushuang, who was at the side, curled her lips, glib tongue. Is this how you usually trick young girls? Cheng Ying heard her words and could not help but blush. She secretly pinched Lu Wushuang and said coquettishly, Cousin. Song Qing-shu did not care at all. Miss Lu must have been tricked by a glib-tongued man in the past. Otherwise, why are you so sensitive? His words just happened to hit the nail on Lu Wushuang's head. Thinking about how Sha Dan called her wife in the past, and now that he had a fiancée, she could not help but feel sad. Cheng Ying could not help but roll her eyes at Song Qing-shu, thinking that it was not easy for me to coax her, and now you're bringing this up again. Could it be that the two of you want me to stand outside? Is this how you treat your guests? Song Qing-shu spread out his hands. Lu Wushuang spat. You're looking at my cousin with such a lecherous expression. What kind of guest are you? Wushuang. Cheng Ying was really a little angry, thinking, why are you dragging me down? Song Qing-shu had just finished chatting with the 6 families and was in a good mood, so he did not mind bickering with the young girl. So he took the opportunity to say, could it be that Miss Lu is jealous because I did not look at you? Hey! Lu Wushuang could not stand his teasing, and with a red face, she ignored him. Young master, please come in. Cheng Ying had been thinking about the matter of Yang was fiancé and wanted to find out what was going on. If it was any other young miss in the Lu residence, they probably would not invite an unfamiliar young man into their room, but Cheng Ying and Lu Wushuang were people of the Jianghu, so they did not care about such details like that. Song Qing-shu walked directly to the bed, and Lu Wushuang felt a hot, masculine aura pressing down on her. She hurriedly shrank back into the bed. What do you want? Even Cheng Ying moved to the side unnaturally, widening the distance between them a little. Standing in front of the bed, Song Qing-shu smiled. What do you think I want? Lu Wushuang's face turned red, and she could not help but spit. Pay perverted. I just want to see your injuries. Song Qing-shu had a strange expression on his face. TSK, you're just a little girl. How can your thoughts be so dirty? Lu Wushuang wanted to find a hole to hide in, but she had always been stubborn and did not want to admit the awkwardness in her heart. I don't need you to pretend to be a good person. Since you want to be a cripple for the rest of your life, then do as you please. Song Qing-shu did not waste any more words and turned to walk away. Hey! Cheng Ying instinctively reached out to grab him, but she only reacted when she felt the warmth of his hand. She hurriedly pulled her hand back and said somewhat unnaturally, Young master, please wait. As expected, Song Qing-shu stopped and smiled at her. Miss Cheng's hand is very cold. Cheng Ying's face turned slightly red. How could this person be so frivolous? She forcefully dispelled her chaotic emotions and said, Please help me, young master. Although Lu Wushuang did not say anything, the desire in her eyes betrayed her thoughts. After all, no girl would drag a crippled leg around for no reason. Because of this, she had often felt inferior. The more inferior she felt, the more sensitive she became. Sometimes, when someone accidentally looked at her injured leg, she would fly into a rage. Over time, everyone in Mountain Ean City knew that this young lady from the Lu family had a bad temper and could not be provoked. If you wanted to help, I can, but what about the reward? Song Qing-shu spoke as if he was talking about something that could not be more normal. Reward? Lu Wushuang instantly exploded. Didn't I kowtow to you just now? First, it was old Madame Tang who said that I didn't agree to it. Second, you should kowtow to me a few times given our seniority. Third, even so, you only kowtowed 5 times, which is far from the 30 agreed. Song Qing-shu lightly said. Third, even so, you only kowtowed 5 times, far from the 30 agreed. Lu Wushuang said angrily. That's because you didn't allow me to continue kowtowing. Song Qingshu shrugged and said with a relaxed expression, "It was mainly because it was almost lunchtime. I didn't want to lose my appetite when I saw brain juice flowing out." You. Lu Wushuang's lungs almost exploded with anger. How could there be such an annoying person in this world? At most, I'll kowtow to you again. After saying that, she struggled to get up. Cheng Ying was so frightened that she hurriedly held her down. At the same time, she looked at Song Qingshu and said, "May I know what young master wants in exchange for treating Wushuang's leg?" Miss Cheng is truly intelligent. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. "How about this? As long as the two of you promise me one thing, I'll treat her leg. I guarantee that when the time comes, I'll run faster than that sow at the village entrance." Hearing his words, Lu Wushuang almost fainted from anger. Cheng Ying looked at him deeply, her eyes sparkling as if they could speak. "Prince Song, why do I also have to promise you one thing?" Song Qingshu very naturally replied, "Because I'm treating her because of Miss Cheng." Cheng Ying had been calm and collected, but when she heard this, her entire body trembled and her face turned completely red. Lu Wushuang had just recovered, but when she heard this, she almost fainted again. "You bastard, you really have designs on my cousin." Today's public accounts content was updated with some important female characters that had previously been left out, such as Gobai, Wanyan Zhongjia, Yelu Nanxian, Li Qiushui, and her sister, Tianshan Tonglao, and so on. Some of the female characters that had flaws in the previous pictures were also corrected, such as Chun Yuan and Dongfeng Muxue. Up until now, other than the female characters in Dream of the Red Chamber, the pictures of all the female characters were basically complete. Interested readers can take a look. Chapter 1226. Song Qingshu smiled. "I'm just admiring Miss Cheng's temperament. Don't be so filthy." Cheng Ying sat to the side with a bashful expression. She had yet to recover from her shock. Seeing this, Lu Wushuang said angrily, "Since you're doing this for my cousin, why do you want me to agree to something as well?" Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise. "I'm treating you, not your cousin." Lu Wushuang felt a sweet taste in her throat, and she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Cheng Ying was not an ordinary girl, and she quickly calmed down after her initial panic. She grabbed Lu Wushuang, who was about to rush forward and fight to the death, and looked at the man in front of her. "What do you want us to agree to?" She was already secretly angry, so she had unknowingly changed the way she addressed him from young master to you. Song Qingshu replied, "I haven't thought about the specifics yet. I'll tell you when I've thought about it." Cheng Ying finally became angry. "Young master, don't you think it's a bit too much to ask us two girls to agree to a man's conditions?" Song Qingshu smiled. "Rest assured, Miss Cheng, it's definitely not as filthy as you think." Cheng Ying's face heated up. She understood that he had already guessed her worries, but even so, this condition was still a bit too harsh. Seeing that she was silent, Song Qingshu stood up and said, "Since the two of you are unwilling, I naturally won't force you. I'll be taking my leave first." However, he had only taken a few steps when a delicate voice sounded from behind him. "Wait, cousin." Lu Wushuang immediately panicked and hurriedly pulled Cheng Ying back, indicating that she shouldn't agree. Cheng Ying ignored her. Instead, she quietly stared into Song Qingshu's eyes. After a long time, she said, "All right, I agree. However, when the time comes, you can't go against the rules of chivalry, and you can't." At this point, her face turned red, and she paused before continuing, "You can't have any lewd intentions." Song Qingshu had a gloomy expression as he spread his hands. "Look at my upright temperament. Do I look like that kind of person?" Cheng Ying and Lu Wushuang nodded in unison. Song Qingshu hurriedly coughed twice to dispel the awkwardness in his heart. "All right, I'll promise you. Hey, what's your name? Show me your leg." He knew that the people in the 6 mansions would definitely find a way to send the news back to Linen. What he needed now was to wait for Han Xingzhou's reaction. Anyway, he had nothing to do during this period, so he simply teased the 2 characters in the original work who he liked as a pastime. He couldn't help but suspect that, deep down, He and Yang Guo were the same kind of person. Their nature was a bit frivolous and scoundrel. Even though he didn't have any evil intentions, he would tease and tease every girl a bit, causing them to lose their senses. That was what he liked. Hearing this, Lu Wushuang hesitantly bit her lip and looked at Cheng Ying. Seeing her nod, she stretched her legs out from under the blanket. Pants off. Oh no, socks off. Song Qing-shu immediately changed his words. He couldn't help but despise himself. His mind was like a heavenly steed, and he didn't know what he had just blurted out. Lu Wushuang blushed and glared at him fiercely. Even Cheng Ying, who was next to her, had a strange expression. What are you looking at? He directly replied. In desperation, Lu Wushuang had to take off her cotton socks. After hesitating for a long time, she tremblingly stretched out her feet. Seeing her look like she was guarding against a pervert, Song Qing-shu was both angry and amused. If they knew that in the future, during gynecological examinations, they might even take off their pants for a male doctor to see, wouldn't they commit suicide out of shame and anger? Song Qing-shu grabbed her injured left foot. He originally didn't have any other thoughts, but when he touched her warm and soft ankle, he couldn't help but be startled. He thought that this little girl's leg had been injured for so many years, but she was still so beautiful. It should be known that in this world, the foot was no less than the breast for a woman. Now that it was held in the hands of a strange young man, Lu Wushuang's body trembled, and she subconsciously shrank her foot. However, the other's hand was steady and strong, and he still held it firmly. She couldn't help but blush. Feeling the faint warmth coming from the other's palm, Lu Wushuang's body suddenly surged with a strange feeling. She didn't know why, but she suddenly remembered the scene of Yang was setting her bones, and for a moment, she couldn't help but become a little dazed. Cheng Ying saw that one of them was holding her foot, and the other was in a daze, so she couldn't help but cough. The two finally came to their senses, and Lu Wushuang immediately became embarrassed and angry. Hey, how long do you plan on touching it? Song Qing-shu's face turned red. He thought that he, an experienced driver, had actually failed in front of a young lady. He was really careless. In order to resolve the awkwardness, he snorted. Why are you being so noisy? I'm checking on your injuries. After saying that, he calmed his mind and began to focus on the meridians in her leg. The two women saw that he had a serious expression on his face and naturally revealed a kind of dignified expression, so they didn't dare to make a sound and disturb him. Song Qing-shu's hand moved back and forth on Lu Wushuang's leg. If it wasn't for his serious expression, Cheng Ying would have thought that he was deliberately taking advantage of her. Lu Wushuang didn't misunderstand, because she could faintly feel that he was infusing true qi into her leg. However, even though she knew that he was touching her leg like this, Lu Wushuang still blushed. Is it still not healed? Lu Wushuang couldn't help it in the end. As soon as she said that, Cheng Ying looked at her in surprise. Even she was shocked. Why did her voice suddenly become so coquettish? It's done. Song Qing-shu finally let go. Lu Wushuang hurriedly pulled her leg back and turned around. Her back was facing the outside, so her expression couldn't be seen. Can it still be healed? Even though Cheng Ying believed that with Song Qing-shu's status, he wouldn't speak without thinking. She couldn't help but worry. It can be healed. Song Qing-shu's words made her feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. However, what he said next made her heart jump again. But I'm afraid she'll have to endure great pain. May I ask, young master, what do you mean? Cheng Ying asked. Even Lu Wushuang turned around curiously. Song Qing-shu said slowly, she was injured when she was young. The person who treated her didn't reconnect her bones. After more than 10 years, her bones have already reconnected. Because her bones are constantly growing, the healing of her wounds is even more irregular. Cheng Ying nodded and said, that's right. My master once diagnosed her. At that time, he sighed. If my cousin had broken her bones when she grew up and became a cripple because it didn't heal properly, he would have been able to do something about it. Unfortunately, my cousin had been injured when she was young. Thinking about her childhood, she couldn't help but think about her parents who had died tragically. Lu Wushuang's eyes instantly turned red, and her mind wasn't on her leg. That's why I need to crush her leg bones and reconstruct her body. However, the pain she'll suffer during this period isn't something a normal person can endure. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. Cheng Ying was shocked. That, can the leg bones be reconnected after being crushed? Stealer of Fragrance only represents the views of the author, Monk Lu Ru. If you find any content that violates the laws of the country, please delete it. The author's position is only to provide a healthy and green reading platform. Chapter 1227. It was no wonder that Cheng Ying had this kind of doubt. The treatment method that Song Qing-shu mentioned was too shocking. He actually needed to crush the leg first. With the medical level of this world, the shock that the two women felt at this moment was probably similar to that of Cao Cao when he heard that Hua Ta wanted to open his skull for ventilation. The most important thing was that although Lu Wushuang was a little lame, her left leg could still support her walking. If her leg was crushed and could not be put back, she would become completely disabled. It was unknown whether she would be able to stand in the future. Was it really worth taking such a big risk? Miss Chung, do you think that Song Mao looks like a madman? Song Qing-shu just looked at her like that. Of course not. Cheng Ying quickly replied and then added a sentence in her heart. Although he doesn't look like a madman, he looks like a frivolous playboy. Since I'm not a madman, why would I do something that I am not sure of? Song Qing-shu smiled and then looked at Lu Wushuang. Miss Lu, think about it carefully whether you want to treat it or not. When you have made up your mind, come to me. But it's best to be quick. I am afraid that I will not stay in the Lu mansion for long. Then he stood up and was about to leave. Wait. Before he took the first step, Lu Wushuang stopped him. There is no need to think about it. Let's do it now. I am willing to accept the treatment. Cousin. Cheng Ying held her hand with a worried look on her face. Lu Wushuang smiled sadly. Cousin, instead of being crippled for the rest of your life, it is better to take a risk. Even if you fail in the end, it will not be too bad. Song Qing-shu showed a strange expression. It was really unexpected that she could be so open-minded. Cheng Ying also knew that the cripple had become a knot in her cousin's heart. Seeing that she had made up her mind, she no longer tried to persuade her. Instead, she turned to Song Qing-shu and bowed. Then I will have to trouble you, young master. Song Qing-shu nodded and wrung the towel in the basin and handed it to Lu Wushuang. Bite this, it will hurt later. This time, Lu Wushuang didn't fight back. Instead, she obediently put the towel in her mouth. However, she was a little girl after all. When she thought that her leg was about to be broken, her face turned pale. She turned around and hugged Cheng Ying tightly. At this time, only her cousin could give her a sense of security. Cheng Ying hurriedly held her in his arms. Feeling her trembling body, he couldn't help but feel a little sad. Song Qing-shu held Lu Wushuang's smooth and well-proportioned calf, caressing the delicate skin. Once again, he found the place where she had been injured when she was young. Suddenly, he exerted his internal energy and squeezed. With a kacha sound, her leg bone broke again. Ah! Lu Wushuang screamed. She suddenly sat up straight and pushed Cheng Ying away. Her strength was so great that Cheng Ying fell onto the bed. Lu Wushuang's face was filled with pain. Because her mouth was open, the towel in her mouth fell out. Song Qing-shu frowned. He had to completely break the crooked bone. Only then would he be able to repair it. He had only started the first step. Next, there would be a few more painful ones. Right now, Lu Wushuang didn't have a towel in her mouth. If she bit her tongue, it would be terrible. But since he had already started, he had to continue. If he stopped midway, not only would it not be effective, it would have the opposite effect. The second wave of pain came from her leg. Lu Wushuang, who was already in a semi-conscious state, didn't realize that the towel had fallen. She only wanted to dissolve all the pain in her body into the towel in her mouth and fiercely bit down. In that split second, Song Qing-shu didn't have time to think of any other methods. He directly raised his arm and stuffed his left hand into her mouth. She bit down fiercely, and even with his mental fortitude, he couldn't help but frown at the pain. However, he didn't say anything. His right hand methodically began to pound pat, or point at her wound. The movements were extremely fast, leaving only afterimages, as if there were countless hands there. At this time, Lu Wushuang gradually realized that she was biting Song Qingshu's hand. For a moment, she was embarrassed and angry. After all, there was no virgin girl who would want a stranger's hand to be stuffed into her mouth. Just as she was about to scold Song Qingshu for taking advantage of her, she was stunned by the faint taste of blood in her mouth. Recalling what had happened just now, she knew that he had good intentions. The anger in her heart immediately turned into incomparable guilt. She looked at the man in front of her with a complicated expression. At this moment, Song Qingshu didn't have the leisure to pay attention to her. All his attention was on treating her leg. Breaking and reconnecting the broken bones required a clear understanding of the human body's meridians and tissue structure, as well as extreme concentration. Otherwise, the slightest mistake would result in failure. Although there was a burst of pain, Lu Wushuang couldn't bear to bite again. Fortunately, Cheng Ying had already reacted at this time. She picked up the towel and replaced Song Qingshu's hand from her mouth. Looking at the deep teeth marks and the blood that seeped out, Cheng Ying looked at her cousin reproachfully, making Lu Wushuang feel ashamed and ashamed. "Young master, let me help you bandage it first." Cheng Ying took out a square handkerchief from her bosom. She was worried that she would disturb Song Qingshu, so she asked tentatively. "Okay." Song Qingshu answered casually, his attention still on Lu Wushuang's leg. Cheng Ying admired him. First, she admired his martial arts. The effect of using one hand was better than others using 10 hands. The orchid acupuncture point brushing hand of Peach Blossom Island and the divine sword palm of fallen heroes were extremely exquisite hand skills, but compared to his method, it was like heaven and earth. However, she admired him more because of his broad mind. Before, the things that happened between him and Lu Wushuang couldn't be considered pleasant. She didn't expect that he not only disregarded the past to treat her injury, but also protected her at the expense of his own injury. It seems that I really misunderstood him before. He can be famous in the world. How can he be that kind of person? Cheng Ying thought in her heart as she gently bandaged a small bow. As if he had eyes on the back of his head, after the wound was bandaged, Song Qingshu retracted his left hand. He took out a porcelain bottle from his bosom and poured out a pitch-black, viscous liquid. A strong smell of medicine spread in all directions. Cheng Ying was surprised and happy. Was this the legendary medicine of the Western region, the Black Jade Continuity Ointment? When the Black Jade Continuity Ointment was applied evenly on Lu Wushuang's calf, a cool feeling spread across her leg. Her tightly furrowed eyebrows couldn't help but relax a little. Song Qingshu's hands moved quickly and wrapped her leg in layers. At the same time, he used a wooden board that he had prepared to hold her calf in place. When he finally stopped, Cheng Ying happily asked, "Young master, is it done?" Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that easy. Now I only fixed the bone, but Miss Lu's leg has been lame for more than 10 years. Some of her meridians have already withered and become blocked. She still needs a master's internal energy to open them up. However, if she doesn't handle it properly, her meridians will be completely destroyed. Looking around the world, I'm afraid only the solitary yang finger can be used properly." Cheng Ying exclaimed, "But South Emperor Duan is 1,000 miles away. What should we do?" Seeing her nervous expression, Song Qingshu laughed and said, "South Emperor is not the only one in the world who knows the solitary yang finger." After saying this, he didn't pay attention to her. He stretched out his fingers and sealed the acupuncture points on Lu Wushuang's leg. As Huang Yaoshi's last disciple, Cheng Ying's knowledge was extraordinary. She saw him move his fingers with ease and retract his arms with ease. He sealed more than 10 major acupuncture points on Lu Wushuang's leg using more than 10 different techniques. Every move was magnificent and had its own style. Cheng Ying had never seen or heard of anything like this before. She was dazzled and her red lips slightly parted. She thought that she had seen Wu Santong use the solitary yang finger before. It was somewhat similar, but it was exquisite and mysterious. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. She was in a daze when she suddenly heard Song Qing-shu say, "Help me wipe my sweat." Ah, Cheng Ying's expression was a little strange. She thought that wiping his sweat was a little too intimate. Is there a problem? Song Qing-shu was puzzled when Cheng Ying did not move. He came from a future and was used to seeing doctors letting nurses wipe their sweat during surgery. He didn't expect that it would cause Cheng Ying so much trouble. I'll help you. Lu Wushuang saw that his head was steaming. It was obvious that he was using up a lot of energy. The sweat on his forehead was about to fall into his eyes. Her heart skipped a beat. She was touched and distressed at the same time. Let me do it. Lu Wushuang had just endured a great deal of pain. At this moment, she looked like she had just been fished out of the water. Her clothes were soaked in sweat, and she was exhausted. How could Cheng Ying let her do it? But when she reached for her handkerchief, she was stunned. Her handkerchief had already been used to bandage Song Qingshu's wound. As if seeing her embarrassment, Lu Wushuang weakly said, Use mine." She then handed over her handkerchief. Seeing the mandarin duck on the handkerchief, Cheng Ying couldn't help but blush. Using this handkerchief to wipe a man's sweat was a little. Her own handkerchief and Lu Wushuang's were a pair. It was originally a token of love that Li Macho gave to Lu Zhanyuan. Later, when Li Macho came to the Lu residence to seek revenge, Lu Lighting split the handkerchief in half and gave one half to Cheng Ying and Lu Wushuang. He hoped that Li Macho would let them go for the sake of the handkerchief. This half of the handkerchief meant a lot to the two girls. Therefore, they always carried it with them, subconsciously preparing to give it to their lover. But now, half of it was used to bandage Song Qingshu's wound, and the other half was used to wipe his sweat. But she noticed that the sweat on Song Qingshu's forehead was getting thicker and thicker. It was almost in his eyes. Cheng Ying couldn't care less and could only wipe his sweat for him. Lu Wushuang was envious. Cousin is prettier than me, and her martial arts are better than mine. Now, even the way she wipes sweat is so elegant and gentle. I'm afraid I'll never be able to learn it. Lu Wushuang only felt waves of warm and genial zhanqi coming from her legs and spreading throughout her body. The pain from a moment ago immediately lessened by a lot. Her mind relaxed, and her whole body could no longer hold on. Her eyes darkened, and she fainted. Because she was worried that she would disturb Song Qingshu, Cheng Ying was carefully wiping the sweat off his forehead. She didn't notice that Lu Wushuang, who was behind her, was falling towards her. Suddenly, there was a weight on her body. Cheng Ying was caught off guard and lost her balance. The two girls fell into Song Qingshu's arms. Chapter 1228. Feeling Cheng Ying's struggle, Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "Don't move. If you cause Miss Lu's wound to shift, then all our efforts will be in vain." Cheng Ying then realized that her cousin was in a coma, and if she rashly stood up, it would very likely cause the wound to shift. She was so scared that she didn't dare to move and just quietly lay there. "Wait for me to help Miss Lu open up her meridians. Miss Cheng, please bear with it for now." Song Qingshu was currently using the one-yang finger and didn't dare to be distracted at this critical moment. "Okay," Cheng Ying softly replied. Her voice was even softer than a mosquito. The delicate fragrance of young girls entered his nose. Even though Song Qingshu had been through a lot, he couldn't help but feel his heart flutter. He was holding two beautiful girls in his arms, and one of them had her face pressed tightly between his legs. Thinking about Cheng Ying's usual elegance and charm, Song Qingshu felt a wave of heat rising uncontrollably from his lower abdomen. Cheng Ying was already very embarrassed lying there and suddenly felt something hard pressing against her face. She couldn't help but be startled. What was this? It clearly wasn't there before. Although she was Huang Yaoshi's disciple and was well-versed in astrology, and divination, she was still a virgin girl. Although Huang Yaoshi's knowledge was celestial, there was a difference between men and women. It was impossible for him to teach his female disciple that kind of posture. Therefore, for a moment Cheng Ying did not know what hit her face. She only thought that Song Qingshu's hidden weapon had slipped out of his pocket. I wonder what kind of hidden weapon it is. Cheng-Ying thought to herself that a concealed weapon hidden by Song Qing-shu, who was a highly skilled martial artist, must be extremely powerful. But no matter how powerful the hidden weapon was, it had nothing to do with her. Soon, her attention was focused on how to move it away. This hard hidden weapon made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Unfortunately, her hands were outside because Lu Wushuang was pressing against her back. If she moved her hands, she would have to move her. Cheng-Ying and Lu Wushuang depended on each other for survival and had long treated her as her own sister. Now that it was related to her lifelong happiness, Cheng-Ying did not dare to take any risks. She was afraid that if she made any big movements, she would cause her cousin's newly reconnected bone to be dislocated. Since she couldn't use her hands, she could only tilt her face slightly and try to move the hidden weapon to the other side. But what she didn't expect was that after she moved it with great difficulty, the thing seemed to be elastic and instantly returned to its original position, causing her face to faintly hurt. Fortunately, Cheng-Ying's temperament had always been calm and collected, so she was not in a hurry. She began to use her face to try to move the hidden weapon away. However, the hidden weapon seemed to be deliberately going against her. She moved it a few times, but it bounced back a few times. Cheng-Ying didn't know if it was an illusion or something else, but she faintly felt that the hidden weapon seemed to have expanded a bit. After going back and forth a few times, Cheng-Ying couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. Could it be that the hidden weapon was stuck somewhere, causing it to bounce back every time? It seemed like the only way to completely solve the problem was to first move the hidden weapon out from where it was stuck. But if she wanted to move the hidden weapon out from where it was stuck, she couldn't just rely on her face to do it. But she also couldn't use her hands to help. Cheng-Ying was distressed when suddenly an idea flashed through her mind. She couldn't use her hands, but didn't she still have her mouth? You've been pestering me for so long. See how I'll deal with you. Cheng-Ying hatefully thought to herself. She opened her red lips and bit down on the hidden weapon, continuously trying to move it out from where it was stuck. At this moment, Song Qingshu's expression was extremely strange. He had been wholeheartedly focused on helping Lu Wushuang unclog the meridians in her legs. He didn't have any evil thoughts in his heart, but he was still in the prime of his life. With a warm and fragrant body in his arms, his young and vigorous body couldn't help but have some reaction. At first, Cheng-Ying tried to use her face to move away. Song Qingshu was extremely embarrassed. He thought that this time, he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Just as he was worrying about how to explain, Cheng-Ying didn't show any signs of blaming him. Instead, she continued to rub her face against his. Song Qingshu was instantly dumbfounded. Could it be that his charm was so great that the indifferent Cheng-Ying would take the initiative to throw herself into his arms after just one meeting? But as soon as this thought popped up, he rejected it. Although he had always been narcissistic, he wasn't narcissistic to the point of being retarded. Could it be that I accidentally used the joyful qi? Then, Song Qingshu guessed again. This was the best explanation for the current strange situation. After all, the joyful qi was extremely powerful. It could make the saintess of Ice Mountain become more passionate than the magma of a volcano. He and many of his female friends had already verified this countless times. But immediately after that, Song Qingshu rejected this conjecture. After all, when he was treating Xiao Longnu, he accidentally let the joyful qi enter her body. It had already led to very serious consequences. Although the consequences were extremely erotic, Song Qingshu was not a despicable person. He didn't want to use such methods to deal with women. Therefore, with that lesson in mind, he later changed the flow of qi in his body so that when he used the single sun finger to save people, the joyful qi would not come out and cause trouble. This time, he didn't use any joyful qi at all. So why did Cheng-Ying have such a reaction? Just as Song Qingshu was thinking about the reason, his body suddenly stiffened. This was because Cheng-Ying had started using her mouth. At this time, Cheng-Ying was also very depressed. She was so tired that her cheeks were faintly aching. But she couldn't move the hidden weapon away. This was because no matter which direction she moved, the hidden weapon would always bounce back to its original position. It was as if it wasn't stuck somewhere, but it was a part of her body. Song Qing-shu had completely opened up the meridians in Lu Wushuang's legs. Then, he fell into a struggle between reason and desire. Should he just go with the flow, or be a Lixiaoyi for once? In the end, Song Qing-shu decided to be a Lixiaoyi for once. After all, everything that happened in front of him was too abnormal. He would feel uneasy if he didn't figure it out. He first moved Lu Wushuang to the bed. Just as he was hesitating about how to tell Cheng Ying also felt the weight on her body lighten. She sat up straight with a long sigh of relief. Cousin's sister's legs are healed. She still had the usual elegant and quiet expression on her face. There was even a hint of holiness. Song Qing-shu's expression became even more strange. I've already opened up the atrophied meridians for her. After a month, when the bones heal again, she should be no different from an ordinary person. Thank you very much, young master. Cheng Ying bowed slightly. Her gaze fell on the hidden weapon again. She couldn't help but ask curiously, what kind of hidden weapon does young master have with you? Hidden weapon? Song Qing-shu looked puzzled. That's it, Cheng Ying said as she reached out to grab the thing that was torturing her to the point of going crazy. Hiss, Song Qing-shu sucked in a breath of cold air. Easy, easy, it's going to break. What's going to break? Cheng Ying's face was blank. But when she noticed that as she pulled, Song Qing-shu's body also followed suit. Suddenly, a light flashed in her mind. In an instant, she understood everything. She immediately screamed and hurriedly let go of her hand. She sat there in shame and anger. Chapter 1229. Noticing that Cheng Ying looked like a frightened rabbit, Song Qing-shu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had been guessing all sorts of reasons, but in the end, Cheng Ying didn't even know what she was doing. Teaching young girls about physiology is really a long way to go. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. The young girls in this world were really pure and cute. Cheng Ying opened her mouth to explain, but found that she couldn't speak at all, especially when she thought about how she had used her mouth. She wanted nothing more than to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. Where was her usual elegance and indifference? Miss Cheng, don't worry. I won't pursue your indecent behavior just now, Song Qing-shu said seriously. Cheng Ying. At this moment, her emotions were as turbulent as the sea outside of Peach Blossom Island. She thought to herself, you're the one being frivolous and rude. I'm the victim, okay? Just as she was about to scold him, she didn't have an unreasonable personality like Guofu. Suddenly, she thought about it and realized that she was indeed the one indecent from the beginning. After thinking about all this, Cheng Ying became even more depressed. Song Qing-shu glanced at the unconscious Lu Wushuang and smiled faintly. I won't tell anyone about what happened just now. Shouldn't Miss Cheng thank me? Thank. Cheng Ying's teeth chattered, and she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, Lu Yu's voice came from outside the door. So young master is here. It took me a long time to find you. It turned out that he had received a signal from his father to invite Song Qing-shu to Shan'in City to tour around and get closer to him. Who knew that when he arrived at Shuangqing Hall, you would find that Song Qing-shu wasn't there at all. After searching for a long time, he finally found out from a servant that Song Qing-shu had come here. Hearing Lu Yu's voice, Cheng Ying was shocked and turned around in a panic. She pretended to wipe her cousin's sweat, but in reality, she was worried that someone would see something strange. So it's Brother Lu. There's no need to call me young master. Just call me Song Qing-shu from now on. Song Qing-shu was very polite to Lu Yu. In the future, Lu Yu was his idol. In this life, Lu Yu had saved his life once. No matter how you looked at it, Song Qing-shu deserved this treatment. However, in this world, Song Qing-shu's reputation and status were far higher than Lu Yu's. At this moment, Lu Yu even felt overwhelmed by the favor. If young master doesn't mind, I'll call you Brother Song in the future. Lu Yu was born into a scholarly family and naturally knew what he was doing. Even though Song was to him, he was worried that he would be of it. Brother. Lu Ying knew that Lu Qing was that he was too. What is Brother Song doing? Lu Yu asked curiously after noticing the situation in the room and the faint smell of medicine in the air. Lu Yu was an intelligent person. After observing Lu Wushuang's condition, he was pleasantly surprised. Wushuang's leg is healed. Cheng Ying was a student of Huang Yaoshi and naturally knew the art of medicine. In order to hide the panic in her heart, she turned around to check on Lu Wushuang's injury. She found that the meridians in her leg were indeed unobstructed. She happened to hear Lu Yu's question and answered, "Prince Song's skill is amazing. Cousin only needs to wait for her bones to grow back, and she should be no different from a normal person." Most of the resentment she felt towards Song Qingshu because of that small interlude was instantly washed away by Lu Wushuang's improvement. Moreover, she was a woman of honor and would not say anything that went against her heart. After confirming his guess, Yu let out a long sigh and bowed solemnly to Song Qingshu. "Brother Lu, there is no need to be so courteous." Song Qingshu hurriedly helped him up. This was different from when he used his inner qi to help Lu Wushuang up. This time, he carefully used his hands to help him up. "Brother Song, you do not know." Lu Yu let out a long sigh. "Our family has invited many famous doctors to treat Wushuang's injury. We even invited the imperial physician from the palace, but none of them were able to help. Wushuang's life has been rough. We already feel very guilty for not being able to protect her parents. If she is crippled for the rest of her life, she will not have the face to see her parents in the underworld. Therefore, Brother Song, you have helped the entire Lu family greatly." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Lu, you're exaggerating. I'm considered Wushuang's senior in the sect, so saving her is part of my duty. Besides, Miss Cheng and Miss Lu have already paid for the treatment." "Paid?" Lu Yu looked at Cheng Ying suspiciously. Cheng Ying was already feeling guilty. When she saw him looking at her, she hurriedly turned her head away. In Lu Yu's eyes, she looked even more suspicious. However, Lu Yu quickly smiled. With Song Qingshu's reputation and status, he would not do such a despicable thing. He was worrying too much. "Brother Song, there are many places of interest in Shanin City. Why don't I take you around?" Lu Yu remembered why he had come and invited him. "Sure." Song Qingshu turned around and asked Cheng Ying, "Miss Cheng, do you want to come with us?" "No." Cheng Ying seemed to have been electrocuted. However, she quickly realized that she had overreacted and hurriedly covered it up. "No need. I still have to stay here to take care of my cousin." "That's good too." Song Qingshu looked at her with a half-smile. Then he said to Lu Yu, "Brother Lu, let's go." "Brother Song, please." Lu Yu also laughed heartily. After the two of them left, Cheng Ying subconsciously touched her face. She felt that it was burning hot. Then she thought about the look in Song Qingshu's eyes when he left. It was as if he could see through everything. She couldn't help but feel her heart beat wildly. She lay down beside Lu Yu and murmured, "Cousin, this time I'm really going to die because of you." Lu Yu brought Song Qingshu around Shanin City. Along the way, Lu Yu asked Song Qingshu for advice on martial arts. Song Qingshu asked Lu Yu for advice on poetry. The two of them chatted more and more happily. Before they knew it, it was already late. Lu Yu smiled and said to Song Qingshu, "Brother Song, let's go back first. How about we continue tomorrow?" "Sure." Song Qingshu smiled. Only then did he realize that the two of them had unknowingly arrived at the entrance of a manor. "Xinyuan?" Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face when he saw the words on the signboard. He stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong, Brother Song?" Lu Yu asked curiously. "It's nothing." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. He couldn't possibly say that he and his ex-wife had left behind a love tragedy here that had caused countless people to sigh endlessly for thousands of years, right? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He saw that Lu Yu's expression didn't change. Could it be that this world didn't have the plot of Phoenix on a hairpin? Suddenly, he felt Lu Yu's body tremble. He couldn't help but look at him curiously. Lu Yu was usually very polite, but this time, he didn't even look at him. It was as if he had been possessed and was staring in another direction. Song Qingshu followed his line of sight and saw two women not far away. One was a maidservant supporting a woman dressed like a madam. The maidservant was naturally ignored. The madam was about 30 years old. To Song Qing-shu, who was used to seeing beauties, her appearance could at most be considered delicate. However, there was a unique temperament between her brows. "You have the air of a scholar." A phrase suddenly flashed through Song Qing-shu's mind. The madam clearly noticed the two of them, especially when she saw Lu Yu. Her face instantly paled. She suddenly clutched her chest, and her body swayed, as if she was about to fall. Lu Yu subconsciously moved, as if he was about to go over to help her. However, he seemed to think of something and stopped himself. His face was filled with pain. By this time, the madam had already caught her breath. She took a deep look at them, and then gradually walked away with the help of her servant girl. Lu Yu stretched his arms, but in the end, he did not shout out the words that were at the tip of his tongue. "It can't be that melodramatic, right?" Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. Why did this situation seem like the opening scene of Phoenix on a hairpin? "Brother Lu." "Who is that, madam?" Song Qing-shu probed. Lu Yu shook his head dejectedly and didn't answer him. Instead, he walked in the opposite direction of the madam. Noticing his desolate expression, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel sad for him. They were clearly a loving couple, but because their parents' orders couldn't be disobeyed, they had no choice but to go their separate ways. One married another, and the other married another. Song Qing-shu wouldn't criticize Lu Yu for not fighting for his wife from God's point of view. After all, people who didn't fit into the society at that time were all hooligans. In the more open era of the future, disobeying one's parents for love wasn't a big deal. However, in this era where etiquette was prevalent, the parents' orders could be said to be equivalent to an imperial edict. If the children dared to disobey, they would be ostracized by the entire society. One was dejected, and the other was sighing. The two of them walked in silence. However, not long after, a servant girl suddenly caught up to them, panting, "Master Lu, please wait." The two of them turned around and saw that it was the servant girl who had been accompanying the madam. Lu Yu's eyes instantly lit up, and a trace of desire seemed to bloom in his eyes. "My master said that it was fate that brought us together. He wants to invite Master Lu over for a drink." The servant girl didn't deliver his madam's message as Lu Yu expected. Instead, she brought news of another person. This, Lu Yu instantly hesitated. On one hand, he wanted to see his wife, but on the other hand, he didn't want to see her new husband. Song Qing-shu asked, "Miss, may I ask who your master is?" Seeing that Lu Yu was hesitating, he asked the question himself to give the other enough time to think about it. The servant girl didn't expect someone to speak to her so politely. For a moment, she was a little overwhelmed. When she saw that the other person was a handsome young master, she liked him even more. "Young master, my master's surname is Zhao. He is currently in charge of the imperial court." That madam just now really was Lu Yu's ex-wife, Tang Wan. Song Qing-shu sighed. He had sighed about this love in his previous life, so he naturally knew the identities of the main characters. After Tang, one was forced to divorce by Lu Yu's mother. She remarried to Zhao Shicheng, who was a member of the royal family at that time. In charge of the imperial court? Looks like Lu Yu's love rival has a powerful background. Song Qing-shu frowned. Chapter 1231. After all, Sixth Yu's body was made of flesh and blood. In the end, he couldn't withstand the effects of alcohol. Song Qing-shu was very depressed. After paying the bill, he helped Sixth Yu back to Sixth Fu. Although Sixth Yu didn't want to go back to that sad place because of what happened today, Song Qing-shu didn't have the habit of spending the night with a man. Furthermore, taking care of a drunk person, just thinking about it made his head hurt. If Sixth Yu was a young girl, he could reluctantly do it, but as a man, he would politely decline, even if Sixth Yu was his idol in his previous life. Because it was already late, Sixth Fu was much quieter than it was during the day. Song Qing-shu didn't know what kind of attitude this world had towards people who got drunk late at night. He was worried that Sixth Yu would be punished tomorrow, so he didn't disturb anyone else. He just quietly helped Six Yu back to his own courtyard. After the maidservant reported, Lu Yu's current wife, Madame Wang, quickly ran out holding the hem of her skirt. When she saw that her husband was drunk and unconscious, she was both angry and distressed. She hurriedly called for the maidservant to help Lu Yu over. Sister-in-law, this one will take his leave first. Although Song Qing-shu was a bit lustful, he wouldn't be tempted by a beautiful woman, not to mention that she was Sixth Yu's wife. Thank you, young master, for today. Sixth Madam bowed. Sister-in-law, you're too polite. Song Qing-shu nodded with a smile. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he suddenly turned back and asked, Sister-in-law, do you know Wang Yuyan? It turned out that when he looked at the other party, he vaguely saw some similarities between her and Wang Yuyan. Thinking that her surname was also Wang, he couldn't help but ask. Yuyan, Sixth Madam, was extremely shocked. I'm her aunt. Young master also knows Yuyan? So that's how it is. Song Qing-shu suddenly understood. Miss Wang and I are friends. Because it was already late, it wasn't convenient for Song Qing-shu to stay here any longer. He casually said a few words and then left. On the way back, he thought to himself that the Lin Chuan Wang clan was indeed a rich and powerful clan with hundreds of years of history. They had marriage alliances with all the civil and military officials in the imperial court, and the marriage partners were often from opposing camps. They clearly understood the principle of not putting all their eggs in the same basket. The six clans had already arranged a unique little courtyard for Song Qing-shu. The decorations inside were extremely exquisite. Any random item would probably be a priceless cultural relic in the future. At the same time, they had also arranged for some delicate and pretty maidservants and clever manservants to serve him. After Song Qing-shu finished washing up, he sent the maidservants and manservants out and lay on the bed alone in a daze. The night is long. It's really hard to sleep alone. Song Qing-shu began to fantasize in his mind. Instead of making so many empty promises, it would be better to send a beautiful young lady to accompany him. Even if they couldn't bear to part with their own young lady, it would be fine to send a young madam over. Of course, these were just his random thoughts. How could a family of 6 scholars do such a thing? Moreover, even if they sent a woman over, would Song Qing-shu really accept it? Just now, I heard from Lu Yu that Guaning has already rushed to Lin and to inform Han Xingzhou. Now, Miss Cheng must be as lonely as I am. Song Qing-shu's eyes lit up. Once this idea arose, he could no longer suppress it. In an instant, he got up from the bed and quietly slipped out of the window. Although Miss Cheng was now in the 6 prefectures and was the daughter-in-law of the 6 clans, once she was discovered, it would definitely cause a great uproar. However, Song Qing-shu had absolute confidence in his martial arts. Even in the imperial palace, he could come and go as he pleased, let alone a mere 6 prefectures. Especially when he thought of the consequences of being discovered. The incomparably tense and exciting feeling made Song Qing-shu even more unable to stop. Thus, he quietly sealed the sleeping acupoints of the maidservants outside and quietly sneaked into the dark night. At this time, Miss Cheng was sitting beside the desk in a daze. Although she had been married for many years, her skin was still as delicate as a young girl's. Because she had just finished bathing, her skin was still faintly emitting a dense mist. Her rosy white skin was exceptionally enchanting. She did not understand why she had washed herself so cleanly. She had even specially found some expensive incense that she had recently obtained to make her whole body smell fragrant. Could it be because of what that person had said before? Miss Cheng's face turned red. She hurriedly shook her head and dispelled that shameful thought. She forced her attention to her husband, who was going to Linen. She wondered if his trip was smooth. Unfortunately, not long after, her thoughts drifted again. She muttered, I wonder if he will come tonight. Madam, are you talking about me? At this moment, she heard an incomparably familiar voice. She turned her head and saw a man with an extraordinary temperament sitting by the window, looking at her with a faint smile. Who else could it be but Song Qing-shu? Ah! Miss Cheng exclaimed and hurriedly covered her mouth for fear of disturbing the maidservants. Then, She hurriedly ran over and pulled him down from the window. Song Qing-shu was surprised and said, "Madam, you don't need to be so anxious." "Bah!" Miss Chung spat. She closed the window and said angrily, "This is the second floor. You sitting by the window is too conspicuous. If other people in the mansion see you, I won't have the face to live. So what if they see me? At worst, I will elope with you and fly far away." Song Qing-shu said with a smile. "Who wants to elope with you?" Miss Chung snorted delicately. Then she wrinkled her brows and fanned the air in front of her nose. "What a strong smell of alcohol. I don't know how much you drank, but your whole body stinks." Although she said that she disliked him, she still gently and considerately poured him a cup of hot tea. "Drink some tea to sober up first. I will bring you some hot water to wash your face." Song Qing-shu shook his head and said, "Later generations of medicine have proven that drinking tea after drinking is the most harmful to the body." Miss Chung was startled. Although she didn't understand later generations of medicine, she still understood the second half of the sentence. "If you don't drink tea, then what do you drink?" "Milk, of course," Song Qing-shu seriously replied. Cheng Yaojia's pretty face instantly turned red. You pervert." Song Qing-shu laughed when he saw her slightly angry yet bashful expression. "Your thoughts are too dirty. Scientific research has shown that milk can form a thin layer of protection on the surface of the stomach, preventing the human body from absorbing alcohol. That's why drinking a can of pure milk before drinking alcohol will make you less likely to get drunk on that day." "I don't want to listen to your nonsense." Miss Chung covered her ears and walked out. "I will bring you some hot water first." Song Qing-shu stretched out his ape arm and pulled her small hand toward him. How could Cheng Yaojia still stand? She cried out in alarm and fell into his bosom. "Madam's body smells so good." Song Qing-shu moved closer to her neck and gently sniffed. His face revealed a trace of intoxication. Miss Cheng's heart trembled. Her voice was as small as a mosquito's as she said, "Unlike you, your body stinks." Song Qing-shu tightly held her in his arms. He felt that she was petite and exquisite, but her body was plump and soft. He couldn't help but move closer to her ear and whispered, "I like to use my stinky body to tarnish your fragrant body." Bad guy. Cheng Yaojia felt her heart sway and her body softened. In fact, she usually hated the smell of men after they drank, but she didn't know why. But at this time, she didn't feel disgusted at all. Instead, she felt that the smell of alcohol had a strange masculine feeling to it. Hearing her coquettish voice, Song Qing-shu felt a raging flame in his lower abdomen. He got up and carried her step by step to the bedside. Realizing what was about to happen, Miss Ching shyly buried her face in his chest. Her whole body trembled, and she didn't want to say another word. As the saying goes, alcohol is the medium of sex. Although Song Qing-shu had used his internal energy to force out most of the alcohol, he had drunk so much with Lu Yu. The remaining alcohol made his mind extremely excited. His actions were no longer as gentle as before. Fortunately, Miss Chung had been teased by his words. Her heart was fluttering and her eyes were blurred. Her body was also well prepared. She gently withstood the man's wave after wave of attacks. Miss Chung usually gave people the impression that she was an extremely shy person. Even after she got married, she was still like this. At this time, she felt her soul tremble. Her voice was even more coquettish than her usual sweet voice. When it fell into Song Qing-shu's ears, it was more intense than any words of love. His fighting spirit was even higher. While the two of them were stuck together like glue, Song Qing-shu was suddenly startled. Feeling the strangeness of the man on top of her, Miss Ching opened her blurred eyes and asked in a sweet voice, "What's wrong?" Song Qing-shu said in a deep voice, "Someone is coming upstairs." Miss Chung was suddenly shocked. She had already ordered the maids not to disturb them. Moreover, Lu Guining had gone to linen. It couldn't be him. So the person who could come upstairs must be an elder of the Lu family. That was why the maids didn't dare to stop him. Thinking of the consequences if she was discovered, Miss Chung panicked. She hurriedly tried to push away the man on top of her and said, "Quickly hide." Perhaps it was because she was extremely nervous, but Miss Cheng's body was several times more sensitive than usual. Feeling the other party's body trembling and shrinking, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel a little happy. How could he be willing to leave? Seeing that the man on top of her did not hide and instead attacked more firmly, Miss Chung was so anxious that she was about to cry. However, the more anxious she was, the more her body was out of control. In the end, her mind went blank. She tightly hugged the man on top of her, thinking that even if the sky collapsed, this man would be there to support it. Cousin, an incomparably gentle voice came from outside the door. Miss Cheng's body was still trembling. She allowed a long breath and quietly said to Song Qing-shu, "It's Chung Ying." Thinking of the matter with Chung Yingsheng during the day, Song Qing-shu's breathing became a bit heavier. Hot kisses fell on her slender neck and snow-white chest. He didn't have the slightest intention of getting up. Just say a few words and drive her away. Chapter 1232. Outside the door, Chung Ying was startled. Why was her cousin so distant today? However, because of what happened the other day, she was a bit absent-minded, so she didn't think too much about it. She subconsciously replied, "I want to talk to you." Chung Yaojia pinched Song Qing-shu's waist and said, "I'm already asleep. Let's talk another day." Outside the door, there was silence. Just when Chung Yaojia thought her cousin had left, Chung Ying's voice rang out again. "I know I shouldn't disturb you so late at night, but I have a lot of things to say and can't find anyone to talk to." It turned out that Lu Wushuang had consumed a lot of her divine sense because of the pain during the day. She was now sleeping to recover her energy. Moreover, Chung Ying had always been a mature and caring elder sister. She was embarrassed to tell her sister what was on her mind. Chung Yaojiao was different. She was her older sister and had been married for many years. As an experienced person, she would definitely be able to give her a lot of advice. Chung Yaojia secretly complained. The man on top of her didn't seem to have any misgivings. He was still rampaging. Finally, she was not prepared for a fierce attack and cried out. Chung Ying, who was outside the door, heard this strange sound. She hurriedly asked, "Cousin, are you okay?" Chung Yaojia wanted to answer, but right now her entire body was trembling uncontrollably. The trembling swept over her like a tidal wave. She knew that once she opened her mouth, she would probably make some embarrassing sounds. She could only tightly close her lips and endure. Cousin, Chung Ying called out a few times, but there was no response. She could only faintly hear some heavy breathing. She couldn't help but frown. "Cousin, I'm worried that something happened to you. I'm coming in." Hearing her cousin's voice, Chung Yaojia became even more nervous. However, the more nervous she was, the more sensitive her body became. She wanted to open her mouth, but didn't dare to stop her. Chung Ying reached out and pushed the door. It was locked from the inside. However, she was the last disciple of the Eastern heretic. She gently released her internal energy and broke the lock. She looked around with concern. Cousin. At this critical moment, Chung Yaojia reached out and pulled down the bed curtain, blocking the view of outsiders. "Cousin, I'm here." At this time, Chung Yaojia had gradually calmed down and was finally able to speak. Hearing that her voice was a little hoarse and seemed to be deliberately lowering it, Chung Ying was puzzled and asked, "Cousin, your voice?" Chung Yaojia pulled the quilt to cover the man on top of her. She sat up and leaned against the headboard. "It's nothing. I just caught a cold." Song Qing-shu, who was under the quilt, couldn't help laughing. He didn't expect that Chung Yaojia, who looked like a well-behaved girl from a noble family, would be so good at deceiving people. "Cold. I've been learning martial arts on Peach Blossom Island for many years, and I know a little bit about the art of Qi Huang. Let me take a look at it for my cousin," Chung Ying said as she walked over to the bed. "No!" Chung Yaojia's heart was about to jump out of her chest as she subconsciously cried out. Chung Ying was also shocked by her fierce reaction. She couldn't help but stop and ask, "Cousin, what's wrong?" I. Chung Yaojia was speechless for a moment. But at this moment, her reaction seemed to be several times faster than usual. She quickly thought of a reason. My cold is not a problem. It won't take long for me to recover. But you, during this time, have to take care of Wu Shuang. If you catch a cold from me and get Wu Shuang into trouble, it would be terrible. Cheng Ying was startled. She thought that what Cheng Yaojia said made some sense. Now that Wu Shuang had just received treatment to set her bones, she was in her weakest state. If she passed a cold to Wu Shuang, it would be troublesome if her injuries worsened. In that case, I'll sit here and talk to cousin. Cheng Ying moved a stool about 10 feet away from the head of the bed and sat down on the table. Cheng Yaojia couldn't wait for her to leave immediately. But how could she say such words now? Since you mentioned Wu Shuang, one of the main reasons I came here this time is to apologize to her. Cheng Ying said apologetically. Feeling that the man on top of her was doing evil again, Cheng Yaojia sucked in a breath of cold air. She tried her best to restrain the trembling in her voice. Why are you apologizing for her? What happened during the day was Wu Shuang's fault. She was young and immature. When a matter reached the old madam, you and brother-in-law were caught in a dilemma. Moreover, when the old madam was angry, you also suffer a lot. Cheng Ying replied softly. The old madam is an elder. Teaching us juniors a lesson is right. Cheng Yaojia's soft hands gently wrote words on Song Qingshu's chest, begging him not to cause trouble at this time. Cheng Ying looked at the bed with some doubt. She wondered what was wrong with her cousin today. Why was she so strange? But at this time, her mind was also preoccupied, and she didn't have time to think about it. She continued to ask, Cousin, I want to ask you about something. What is it? Cheng Yaojia only wanted her to quickly ask and leave. She couldn't stand the feeling of dancing on the edge of a cliff. What happened during the day? Cheng Ying paused, as if she was thinking about how to phrase it. After a long time, she continued, It seems that brother-in-law is very familiar with the Golden Snake King, Song Qingshu. We can be considered to be familiar. Cheng Yaojia was very surprised. She never thought that she would ask about Song Qingshu. If she wasn't worried that her movements would be too big, she really wanted to lower her head and bite the man. Oh, Cheng Ying responded and then fell into silence. This aroused Cheng Yaojia's curiosity. What do you want to know? I don't know if you are familiar with Song Qingshu. Cheng Ying finally opened her mouth. Not bad. Cheng Yaojia thought that the man was now riding on her body. Did she know if they were familiar or not? Cheng Ying hesitated for a long time and finally asked, Cousin, can you tell me what kind of person Song Qingshu is? Feeling the change in the man's body, Cheng Yaojia secretly spat. She blushed and snorted. Why did you suddenly ask about him? No special reason. Cheng Ying replied somewhat unnaturally. Thinking about what happened in the afternoon, even though it had been so long, she still wished that there was a hole in the ground that she could crawl into. I just saw that he didn't hold any grudges against me and healed Wu Shuang's leg injury. I was very grateful, so I couldn't help but feel a bit curious. These past few years, I've spent most of my time on Peach Blossom Island, so I'm not very familiar with the matters of the Central Plains. So, I wanted to ask what kind of person he is. Him? Feeling the man's masculinity and heat, Cheng Yaojia's heart was filled with tenderness. She sweetly replied, He is a great hero with matchless martial arts. For the sake of the Han people, he imitated Zhang Liang Bolong and assassinated Kanshi. Then, he defeated all the martial arts masters in the world and became the Golden Snake King. Then, he called upon the wind and summoned the rain, causing the Qing Kingdom's 100,000 troops to be completely annihilated. Hearing her affectionate voice, Song Qingshu's heart was moved. He no longer teased her like before. Instead, his actions became more gentle. Cheng Yaojia obviously felt his reaction, so her voice became even more tender. So, he has this kind of ability. Cheng Ying's beautiful eyes lit up. She also noticed the coquettish tone in Cheng Yaojia's voice. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. From your tone, it seems that you admire that Song Qingshu a lot. Won't brother-in-law be jealous if he finds out? Cheng Yaojia shyly smiled. Your brother-in-law won't be jealous. Cheng Ying looked surprised. So, cousin has so much confidence in brother-in-law. Cheng Yaojia smiled, but didn't say anything. Outsiders wouldn't know about the relationship between the three of them. I want to ask cousin a private question. I hope cousin won't be angry. Cheng-Ying suddenly said bashfully. We are sisters. You are treating me like an outsider. Cheng Yaojia looked at her in surprise. She knew how elegant and refined her cousin was. What could have caused her to have such an expression? Even Song Qing-shu, who was under the quilt, stopped what he was doing. He curiously pricked up his ears to hear what she was going to ask. Then I will ask. Cheng-Ying took a deep breath and then lightly asked, Cousin, have you ever used your mouth to do that for brother-in-law? Song Qing-shu, who was listening attentively, almost choked. Cheng-Ying had always been elegant and quiet. Her whole body seemed to emit an aura of abstinence. People like her should be talking about the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, the 5 elements, and the 8 trigrams. Who would have thought that she would ask such a dirty question? Even Song Qing-shu, who was from the later generation, felt that this question was too much, let alone Cheng Yaojia, who was from a noble family in this world. She was ashamed and angry. You are a girl. How? How can you ask such a question? Cheng-Ying seemed to have steeled her heart and continued to ask, Did you or didn't you? No, Cheng Yaojia resolutely replied. Never. In fact, for a traditional girl like her, if it was before, she wouldn't even understand Cheng-Ying's question. However, after being with Song Qing-shu for so long, she had already tried all kinds of tricks according to his whims. Naturally, she understood this kind of question in a second. Seeing her strong reaction, Cheng-Ying was in a trance. She muttered, It turns out that even doing this kind of thing between husband and wife is a bit immoral. Cheng Yaojia didn't hear her clearly. What are you talking about? Nothing. Cheng-Ying shook her head and then hesitantly said, If a woman accidentally uses her mouth to kiss a man, there. Before she finished speaking, Cheng Yaojia exclaimed, If that's the case, the woman only has 2 choices. Either she kills the man or she marries him. Ah. Cheng-Ying was dumbfounded. She couldn't help but emphasize, but the woman didn't do it on purpose. Everything was just an accident. Whether she did it on purpose or not, Cheng Yaojia sighed. This world is unfair to women. Men care a lot about a woman's reputation. In the previous Ming dynasty, Hai Rui was an upright and respected official. However, because his daughter accepted a piece of cake from a male servant, he thought it was damaging to his reputation. As a result, he starved his 5-year-old daughter to death. If the situation you're talking about is like that, if the woman can't kill the man or marry him, the consequences will be incomparably miserable. Under the covers, Song Qing-shu curled his lips. He thought that the matter of Hai Rui killing his daughter was widely spread in later generations. However, some people had done some research and found that this matter was not recorded in official history. It was only recorded in the Ming dynasty's Yao Shilins, Jinji Bian, the Ming dynasty's Shen Di Fuz, Wanli Yue Bian, and the Qing dynasty's Zhou Lianggong Shuing. The credibility of these records was really questionable. After all, Hai Rui was upright and outspoken. He was afraid that he had offended a lot of people. Outside, Cheng-Ying was scared stiff. Her face was incomparably pale. She thought that with Song Qing-shu's martial arts skills, even if her master came personally, he wouldn't be able to kill him. Could it be that she had no choice but to marry him? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.